Welcome to the Newsome MMA podcast, partnered with Concussion Pro 1, the world's first dedicated concussion supplement. I'm your host, as always, Newsome, with my co-host John, and tonight we're going to be breaking down UFC 231 in Toronto, Canada. John, how you doing tonight, bro?
How you doing, mate? I'm very well, thank you. Very well. Looking forward to pay-per-view numbered card. Looking forward to talking some fights.
Absolutely, man. And just before we start, I'd just like to remind you all that the premium bets membership options from Newsome MMA are available, and on the Newsome MMA website you have the options of a standard, bronze, silver and gold membership, and these memberships provide cheaper prices per fight card for those who commit to slightly longer terms, opposed to purchasing my picks individually per week. You can find all of these membership options at newsomemma.co.uk/premium-bets. So without further ado, let's break down UFC 231 from bottom to top, and in the first fight of the night, we've got Laprise versus Dhiego Lima. So, John, who have you got in this one?
Yeah, this is another interesting fight. I mean, Dhiego Lima really does need to win this. I mean, if he loses this, this is his last chance in the UFC. Full stop. Obviously, he was part of the Ultimate Fighter Redemption series after he'd previously competed in the Ultimate Fighter season 19. Lost to Eddie Gordon in the finale, winning all his bouts on the way. But yeah, losing first round Eddie Gordon, and then he he had a few fights in the UFC after that. He had three more fights, going 1 and 2, losing to Tim Means and Jingliang Li. Again, two tough competitors. He went away. He fought at Legacy, Titan, and then he came back for the Redemption season last year. As per the first time he was on the show, won all his fights, got to the finale, and of course lost to Jesse Taylor. He then fought again, Yushin Okami, lost the decision. So I think it's really a case now of he needs to get this win too. I think another defeat here will spell the end of Lima, and I don't think he'll be given another chance at redemption on this occasion. Chad Laprise, his last fight against Vicente Luque, he was pretty much of a stalemate to the first 3 or 4 minutes of the round, and then Luque hit him with that strong straight counter and put him away. The fight before that, of course, he defeated Gloria Bufando. That was another strange one. Bufando knocked Laprise down. Laprise managed to weather the storm on the ground, managed to get a takedown himself, and Bufando looked completely lost on the ground, and Laprise mounted him and eventually put him away with ground and pound, and the ref jumped in. But yeah, it's interesting watching Laprise, because over the last few fights I've noticed that he does tend to struggle. The two shots, the shot that got him down against Bufando and the shot that pretty much put him away against Luque, are those straight shots, those 1-2. So he's going to have to be careful of those in this fight. They seem to be his weakness when he's throwing punches himself. He kind of leaves himself open to that counter 1-2. But ultimately, I'm going with Laprise in this one. I think it's a relative stalemate standing. Laprise can take the fight to the ground. He's got a decent body lock, decent trips from there. He attempted that several times against Luque. May not come off in that fight, but he's decent. I think he will be able to get the fight to the ground. And ultimately, I just think he'll have too much for Lima. I think it may go to a decision, but I wouldn't be surprised if Laprise finishes it late on, possibly third round stoppage via, again, ground and pound, or possibly if he's got him on the mat, locking on a submission rear naked choke possibly, and put him away late in the third.
Yeah, I agree with you. And Dhiego Lima was always one of those fighters that I was always rooting for. I was really rooting for him. Yeah. I love the Lima brother, especially his brother. I think his brother is potentially top 3 welterweight on the planet, you know. And I've always wanted the same thing for Dhiego Lima in his first stint in the Ultimate Fighter. You know, I liked him in that, and he went far in that season, and he just plateaued very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And I just don't think, you know, Yeah, like you mentioned, he went away and he got a couple of wins in Legacy and Titan, but he came back and now he's looking at a 3-fight losing streak. And Jesse Taylor, I can understand that. Jesse Taylor's a fighter that I think is just a really tough out for anybody.
Yeah.
But Yushin Akami, stylistically, it was a bad fight for him, but you've got, if you're going to be successful in the UFC, you've got to be able to, to deal with fighters that are going to bring the pressure and bring takedowns, and you have got to give yourself a chance of winning those fights, and he just didn't. It was one-way traffic. It was a relatively comfortable win for Yushin Akami, who never seemed to be in too much danger in that fight, and I just think Chad Laprise is going to have a little bit too much for him. I don't think you can look at you can put too much stock into the Vicente Luque fight. That dude's going to dead people
Yeah, he's
with
a
that
beast.
short
Yeah.
left up all day long for many years to come. Gloria Bafando was a good win for him as well. Bafando came out looking good, throwing some crazy kicks and things like that, and he just ended up getting taken down, and Laprise just dominated on top, showing that veteran experience. And yeah, I just think he's going to have too much for Dhiego Lima. I think if it stays on the outside, which I doubt, I still think Laprise will be able to manage that distance and move in and out as and when he pleases. I do think he's going to be the aggressor, though. I think Lima will back up. That'll give Chad Laprise the fight he wants. It'll give him opportunities to get strikes off. If for whatever reason Dhiego Lima does get going on the feet and does really start to land some volume on Laprise, and Laprise can take him down as well, like I've already mentioned with Yushin Akami. He didn't make it too difficult. It wasn't too difficult for him to take Dhiego Lima down. Chad Laprise could definitely do that, and then he can work on top as well. What I don't like about Dhiego Lima as well, when he's on his back, is he shows no signs of urgency, shows no signs of very little signs of throwing submissions up from the bottom. We have seen it a couple of times in the past, but he's not really successful with it. He definitely shows no sign of getting up. And the one thing that I hate in mixed martial arts is when a fighter's on the bottom and they're getting ground and pounded, not too heavy, but someone's working on top. They're doing just enough for the referee not to stand them up, and just running the clock down and scoring points is closing that guard from bottom. I hate to see it. That guard should never be closed, because you're accepting position. You either get up or you attack, or you try and improve a position. That guard should not be closed, and I don't like seeing that. So if Chad Laprise does get on top, I'm absolutely confident that Dhiego Lima isn't going to get back up. But I'm not sure we see it hit the ground, to be honest. I think Chad Laprise will get some shots off early. He'll really start making Lima work. Lima won't be the one that's shooting for takedowns, or I'd be surprised if he did. And Chad Laprise won't want to take the fight to the ground if he's being successful on the feet. He's a veteran. He'll know where he's winning the fight. And I just think an accumulation of strikes. I'm not sure when. I don't think it'll be the first round. I think he'll get it done before it's late on, though. So I would probably say the middle of the fight, sort of in the second round. I think an accumulation of strikes. I think Lima will just have too much. I think he'll just end up just not intelligently defending himself in some sort of position against the cage, or maybe he'll turtle up and the referee will have to jump in and save him. So I've got Chad Laprise winning this fight via TKO. Now in the next fight of the night, we've got Brad Katona versus Matthew Lopez. So John, what's your take on this?
Yeah, another fight that I'm really looking forward to. I'm a big fan of Brad Katona from what I've seen of him so far. I really like. He's a really seems a really well-rounded mixed martial artist, which you've got to be in the game in these day and age. And yeah, he was fantastic in the Ultimate Fighter. Of course, beat Jay Cuccinello in the finale, and yeah, and I'm fancying him to win this one as well. I mean, Matthew Lopez is a dangerous guy. I know he's lost his last two fights against Alejandro Perez and Rafael Assunção, but they're both very dangerous guys in themselves. That Alejandro Perez fight, that was a pretty crazy couple of rounds. First round he did very well against Perez, but he seemed to just fade in the second round. And he was faring quite well against Assunção as well. before he was eventually stopped in the third round. What I do like about Lopez is his aggression. He'll walk you down. He'll throw power shots at you. He throws his shots, especially in his last fight against Perez. He was literally throwing everything he had into his shots, and then he'll back you up against the fence and then go for the takedown. As soon as he's taking you down, he'll be transitioning to try and work to the back straight away. He nearly caught Perez in a couple of rear naked chokes early on in that fight, and Perez did well to escape. But yeah, I do like the fact that he'll pressure you, and he'll work for that transition. As soon as he's got you down, he won't rest on his laurels and think, I've got you down, I'll try and hold you here for a little bit, and he'll always be working to advance his position straight away. But yeah, I'm going with Brad Katona in this fight. I think this is another fight. I think this will go the distance. But I do like Katona. I think his boxing's crisp, he's sharp, got good takedowns, good takedown defense. I think we might see Lopez win the first round of this fight, similar to against Perez. He'll come out strong. He'll throw heavy shots. He may land a couple of takedowns, but I think Katona's got good energy, good stamina. I think he'll be able to keep a good pace for 3 rounds. I think ultimately then he'll start picking Lopez off, and as Lopez tires, he'll be shooting in for those takedowns with a bit more desperation. And and I think Katona will just box him up, sprawl those takedowns, and get the decision win.
Yeah, I'm going the other way here, but I'm really torn on it, and it's disappointing as well because I'm a big fan of Matthew Lopez. Anybody that knows me well knows that I love that style. He's a wrestler, Greco-Roman background as well. So the reason it's tough because he gassed out after round 1 against Perez in his last fight. So the only time he's really struggled in regards to his cardio was the first fight against Rani Yahya. But that fight was fast paced. He was getting worked on. He was getting grappled. It was his UFC debut. Excuse me. So you can sort of forgive that a little bit. A lot of people tire or will tire when they're doing 3 rounds with someone like Rani Yahya, who's having things going his own way inside the cage. But the Perez one was really strange, and the reason why it was so strange is because he won round 1. He was winning round 1 and reasonably comfortably as well. He was having success with his takedowns. Yeah, a couple of them he got made to work, but wrestlers should be used to being made to work a little harder for takedowns, so that shouldn't have been anything new to him. So although that was, in my opinion, the first real time that it happened, that it shouldn't have happened, I'm not sure if that was a one-off. He could have had a bad weight cut. He could have had a little niggling injury or anything like that. But the fact of the matter is, we've seen it now, and so we have to take it into consideration. And this is why I'm very apprehensive. Normally my 3 rules is don't bet bad cardio, bad chin, or no ground game, get up game. So that sort of falls into, that does fall into, potentially not a great cardio, but like I say, it could have been a one-off. So it's tough. As for Brad Katona, I agree, he's well-rounded. He's got good shots. He's got decent takedowns himself. He's got a decent top game. He can stand up from bottom. I do disagree though with your point on the takedown defense. I don't think he's got great takedown defense. I've seen him taken down not quite a few times, but a couple of times, and I just feel that the guys that he was getting taken down by, in regards to the wrestling and the credentials and stuff, aren't even anywhere close to Matthew Lopez, and this is where I'm favouring Lopez. So I'm almost just giving the edge to the takedown offense and the takedown defense of Brad Katona, opposed to Matthew Lopez and potential cardio issues. For sure though, if the same thing happens in this fight that happened in the Perez fight and he gasses out, Brad Katona will take control of the fight. He might even potentially finish him as well, like Perez did. But it's tough. You don't know. But like I said, you've got to take it into consideration. For me, I don't know, the line's really wide as well. So Matthew Lopez opened at like plus 200. I think it's got even better since then. and then come a little bit back down. At some point it was like plus 220, and Brad Katona is one of them fighters that is well rounded, but he's not a specialist in any area, and we've seen it in the past time and time again. The one example I'll use is Brett Johns versus Aljamain Sterling. When these Europeans come in against American wrestlers, that's when you really notice the difference in the caliber of the wrestling and the grappling. And then the grappling as well is something else. Matthew Lopez is a decent grappler. He'll take that back really quickly. But if he doesn't take the back, I don't think he offers a lot in regards to keeping the fighters down. He almost has to take the back to keep the fight where he needs it to be. If he's in side control or half guard, or if he tries to mount, I think fighters can get up, and Brad Katona's got a good get up game. So you can sort of see tell from the way I'm breaking this down that there's a lot of question marks in this fight for me. I can see a path to victory for both guys, but it depends on red flags, if they appear or not. Again, with what I've discussed with the cardio and takedown defense and stuff like that. So I'm almost going Matthew Lopez. I think I am going Matthew Lopez. I think that the American wrestling will pay dividends here. If he can do that for 2 rounds, then he's probably going to win the fight. Because I don't see Brad Katona getting wrestled for 2 rounds and then coming back and knocking Matthew Lopez out in round 3. So I think Matthew Lopez can do it for 2 rounds, and for that reason, I'm taking Matthew Lopez to win via decision. Then in the next fight of the night, we've got Devin Clark versus Aleksandar Rakic. So John, who have you got in this one?
This one we've got your guy Aleksandar Rakic. I'm a big fan of this guy, mainly because you've emphasised to me how good this guy is, and I've sat up and paid attention. I'm like, this guy is good. 26 years old. He's got a very bright future ahead of him. I think we saw in his last fight against Justin Ledet, I think was it the biggest strike disparity in the history of the light heavyweight division. It was like some ridiculous mauling.
The numbers escape me. I did my research when I interviewed Rakic a few weeks ago, but off the top of my head now, it was the biggest strike differential. It was something along the lines of 268 to 40 something like that. It was something
absolutely crazy. But yeah, I'm a big fan of the guy. The guy's a beast. He'll take his opponents down. He'll hold them there. He'll maul them. He's strong strikes when they're standing. I just think he's going to have too much for Devin Clark. I mean, Clark lost his opening fight in the UFC, then won a couple on the bounce, and then got given that really tough fight against Jan Blachowicz, who we know is on a tear at the moment, which I think was a step too far. He then came back and got the win against Mike Rodriguez. But again, I think this is going to be a step too far, and I think we're going to see Rakic do what Rakic does. I think he'll take him down. I think he'll beat him up on the feet. He'll take him down. I think he'll beat him up on the ground and land that beast heavy ground and pound that he's getting well known for. And does he finishing? I'm not sure. Possibly you may see similar to Blachowicz when he gets him on the ground. He's landing that ground and pound. Clark may turtle up or roll over, give up his back, and we may see a submission possibly. But ultimately, I'm going your. How could I not go against your guy Rakic? I wouldn't hear the end of it if I did anyway. So I'm going Aleksandar Rakic.
If you did.
No, I'm going Aleksandar Rakic via Aleksandar Rakic mauling.
Yeah, and the first thing I want to mention is absolute credit to Devin Clark for taking this fight. I'm definitely not going to name names, so please nobody ask me. But I know for an absolute fact that at least 5 or 6 people, to my knowledge, have turned down fight contracts with Alex Rakic just purely because they don't want to get in there with him. I know that for a fact, and I'm telling you now, there's some big names in there as well. You'd be surprised. So fair play to Devin Clark for taking this fight first and foremost.
Yeah.
But one point that you mentioned, John, and this is something that I absolutely agree with as well. Like I keep hearing. Obviously, Devin Clark's predominantly a wrestler first and foremost, and I keep hearing a lot of people talking about how Alex has got to be careful of being taken down, and because that's Devin Clark's path to victory, and I get that, I totally understand it. But what the point people are missing is completely the flip side to that. Fucking Devin Clark needs to be careful of getting taken down himself
Yeah,
as well.
definitely.
It ain't this is not. I can categorically tell you this is not a striker versus a grappler matchup
No.
at all. Rakic is so well rounded. His striking's on point. He's quick. He hits hard as fuck. His wrestling, I'm telling you, his wrestling is on a different level. The secret that I was holding from the last fight that he revealed on the interview anyway, so I'm happy to discuss it, is all the years of training that he's been doing with the Chechens and the Dagestanis. So in the build-up to the Ledet fight, when I heard some, and by the way, this analysis that I'm about to talk about was absolutely fair and warranted, because the people that were talking about this sort of stuff just didn't know what I knew, because I kept it to myself, obviously. Alex told me in confidence not to say anything, and that's what I did. But there were people saying that Ledet will take him down if it gets tough and things like that, and I was just thinking, nah, that's not going to happen. And if anything, it'll be the other way around. He's a beast, and obviously being an American top team as well, they've got a crew of Russians over there, so he's also working with King Mo closely in this camp, so his wrestling will be improving leaps and bounds. And it's not just the offensive wrestling, it's defensive as well. So I almost feel sorry for Devin Clark in this fight, because I don't see how he beats Alex. Even, we can talk about puncher's chance and stuff like that, but Alex has also got an iron chin. Like, I'd be very, very surprised if he knocked him out. I don't see it. And then the other side to all this is I don't think Devin Clark should be fighting at light heavyweight. Yes, he's a big middleweight, but he's sort of in that unfortunate situation that I talk about quite a lot, where he's too big for one division but way too small for the division above. And he's fighting Alex, who's huge. He's 6'5". He's built like a brick shit. He's massive. So it's like, Devin Clark's in for a really tough fight here. Like I say, he's got to wrestle. That's his best path to victory. But I just do not see him getting the better of Alex, trying to take him down. If he does manage to take him down, I think Alex will spring straight back up to his feet. I think he's been training with better wrestlers at ATT and over his MMA career as well, with the Chechens and Dagestanis, better wrestlers than what Devin Clark can offer. And I actually like Devin Clark. I do think that he needs to drop down to middleweight. I don't like him at light heavyweight. I do think he needs to go back to middleweight, and I think he can win fights, and a fair few fights at middleweight. This is a horrible fight for him. I do think Alex gets to finish in this one as well. I think he's going to mentally break him inside the cage. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that I think with a fighter, when they've got a certain path to victory, the biggest path to victory, and it gets nullified, it almost then makes them second guess and think, well, shit, I've tried what I need to do to win this fight, and it hasn't worked, and now I'm in their world now. And those sort of fights tend to mentally break fighters inside the cage in that moment, and I think that's what's going to happen in this fight. So I've got Aleksandar Rakic to beat Devin Clark via TKO. Now in the next fight of the night, we've got a good one here, and a fight that's been matched before, didn't materialise, but now we are going to get it. We've got Olivier Aubin-Mercier against Gilbert Burns. So John, who have you got in this one?
Yeah, this is a really good fight. I'm really happy they rebooked this one. It's an interesting fight. I mean, Gilbert Burns was on that run. I mean, he's another decorated jiu-jitsu guy. He's got multiple titles in the grappling world, and he's a very, very, very dangerous guy when the fight hits the mat. So I think that's why this fight's so exciting, because stylistically it's a very good fight, because we know that Aubin-Mercier's best weapon is his wrestling and his smothering top game. So it's going to be interesting to see. Burns was on that run where he, like I say, he's so well known for his dangerous submissions, but then he went on a couple of fight win streak, two very good knockout finishes over Jason Sago and Dan Moret, and we thought, here we go, he's the decorated jiu-jitsu guy, and he's now starting to put people away with his hands as well. He's the whole package. But then he ran into Dan Hooker, who's absolute beast at the moment since he moved up in weight again, and yeah, so it's an interesting one. Both these guys coming in off losses. Aubin-Mercier, of course, lost that unanimous decision to Hernandez. Hernandez was just too strong for him to take down, and ultimately Hernandez just outpointed him in that fight. I think Aubin-Mercier is going to win this fight. I think he's going to take Burns down and smother him. It's a dangerous game to try and play with him, because obviously we know what he's like on the mat. He can throw up arm bars. He's got a number of armbar finishes on his record. He's very dangerous on the ground, but I think that's the approach he's still going to go with. If they keep it standing, it's pretty even. I'd probably give Burns the slight striking advantage, as he's slightly more dangerous, as he has got finishes with his hands on his record and recently. Ultimately I think Aubin-Mercier is going to win this fight. I think he's going to take Burns down. I think he'll be able to get him down, and I think he'll be able to avoid the submissions for the entirety of the fight, and on his way to a decision victory.
Yeah, and this, I'm starting to do this every single week now. It started with Prazeres and Fabinski, and then last week it was Matthews and Martin. And this week, this is my main event. I just think the stylistic matchup is amazing. I'm so glad that when the fight didn't happen last time, that it's now available for us to see, because when you really break it down and look at where each guy's good, where each guy's bad, striking, grappling, wrestling, submissions, it's really, really intriguing. Now for me, just starting with the striking, for the start, I think we've got Burns, which, like you said, is dangerous striking. He is the more dangerous striker out of the two. But because he's the most dangerous striker out of the two, that sort of, with how Burns is dangerous, is because he throws the big overhand bombs, trying to find the chin of his opponent. That's why he's so dangerous. Whereas Aubin-Mercier is definitely the better technical striker. He doesn't look for the overhand bombs. He'll look for volume. He'll look for accuracy. So straight away in the striking, you've got a clash of striking styles, which is great. Then you look towards the ground game. Aubin-Mercier, definitely for me the better wrestler. Works better in the clinch. Got a good judo background, but then he's also got his wrestling background as well. So he's got a wide array of takedown abilities, whether it be a single, a double, a trip, a throw. He can really do it all. But Burns is by far the better submission fighter on the mat. That's not even close. The dude's a legit black belt, ex-world champion at black belt level in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So, again, the clash of style in the ground game. So it's almost like I've got a funny feeling one guy is going to be really dominant in this fight, and like pre-fight, it's almost like you can't be totally sure of who it is. I've got a big smile on my face now just breaking this down, because I just think it's a really good fight. I think it's a fight that Aubin-Mercier is going to win, though. I think he can he avoid being taken down and being worked top control? I think he can. Could he nullify the jiu-jitsu of Gilbert Burns on the mat if he's on top? I think he can if he passes guard. That's crucial here. I think if he stays in Gilbert Burns' guard, Gilbert Burns has got nice arm bars and sweeps and reversals and stuff, and he's going to be very, very dangerous if Aubin-Mercier decides to take him down and stay in his guard. And if he did that for any longer than sort of like a minute and a half or 2 minutes, you've got to be really concerned for the win for Aubin-Mercier for sure. But if he can take him down and pass, then he stands a lot better chance of nullifying the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu of Burns and riding top control. And then on the feet, I think Aubin-Mercier can stay out the way of the big power, of the big bombs. I think he's definitely technical enough to see those come in, and being on his bike as and when they are coming, move in and out of range as he needs to. So yeah, I think it's a great fight. It's great matchmaking again. But yeah, it's a fight that I think Aubin-Mercier is going to take. So I've got Olivier Aubin-Mercier to win via decision. Then in the next fight of the night, we've got a fight that the line opened very wide and it's flipped. So we've got Eryk Anders that was minus 260, I think, at one point, against Elias Theodorou, was plus 175. Now Elias Theodorou's the favourite. So, John, who have you got?
Yeah, this is a fight that I don't very often say this, but I'm not overly enthusiastic about this fight. I don't know what it is. There's something about this fight that I just look at it and I just think it's going to be quite.
It's not one half of the fight, is it?
It partly is, yeah. But I just think it's going to be a very tentative fight. Eryk Anders, we spoke about Anders. I think he's fought 3 or 4 times since I've joined you on the podcasts, and he's someone that I still haven't made my mind up on yet as to where his ceiling is and how good he is and how good he can be. Obviously, we saw him win his first 2 fights against Rafael Natal and Marcos Perez, and then obviously get that main event shot against Lyoto Machida. Obviously, he lost that, quite a close fight, split decision loss. Then he came back against Tim Williams, and that Tim Williams fight, I thought he was going to really put a stamp on it. Tim Williams, in his last fight before that, we spoke about how we weren't particularly over impressed with him. He was quite hittable. He didn't really seem to offer much. But I mean, Anders struggled in that fight. I know he eventually got that brutal head kick with about 15 seconds left in the 3rd round, but up until that point, especially the first round and a half, he really struggled against Williams. He couldn't find his range, he couldn't find any rhythm in his striking, and he really struggled. And then obviously in his last fight, he came up against Thiago Santos. That was a very good fight, very entertaining fight, but ultimately Anders was just worn out and beaten up, and he was done, well, to be fair, they were both done pretty much, but Anders was slightly more done before Santos was in that one, and it was an exciting fight, but again, it didn't really give me the answers I was looking for as to where Anders really sits in this division and where I think his ceiling is. Theodorou, like we kind of joked about then, he hasn't got a particularly fan-friendly style. A lot of his fights go to decision. He's quite cautious, very in and out with his strikes, and quite a lot of point fighting. And we have seen Anders similar before. We've seen him quite tentative in some of his fights. So I do think this is going to shape up to be quite a tentative fight, and one that I can see the crowd being quite displeased with. Ultimately, I am siding with the initial favourite, Eryk Anders, in this one. I think he will be able to eventually land shots on Theodorou. I think he'll push him against the cage. I know Theodorou is good at getting out of those situations. He's very springy. He can cut angles and circle off the cage well, but I don't think there'll be a great deal of action in the fight, but I think Anders will slightly edge what action there is and take a decision in this one.
Yeah, I'm going the other way, and I agree with the line flip. I expected a pick 'em when it opened. Actually, I taped the fight before the lines were released, so I was sort of expecting a pick 'em in a way, but then from the different angle, I understand that Elias isn't favoured a lot amongst a lot of bettors. I don't know why, because the guy wins a lot of fights.
Yeah.
When you've got a bet on a guy, you don't care how ugly he's making a fight. You just care about cashing that bet. So, and Eryk Anders has been popular with the bettors. People love that type of big dude that's got takedowns, that's got power, and so yeah, I didn't really know what to expect ultimately. But I do agree with the line flip. Now, what I noticed from the tape that I watched with Eryk Anders is Yes, he's got pressure. His cardio's quite suspect in regards to how much he's pressuring. So if he does put a lot of pressure on an opponent in a fight, the chances are he will fade. But if he does pace himself, he can go the distance. We saw that against Machida. He didn't put on a massively heavy pace, and he managed to go 5 rounds. He didn't look overly gassed or anything like that. So it ultimately just depends on how hard Eryk Anders goes in his fights. But he lacks volume, and this is key for Elias, because to beat Elias, you need to have volume, and you need to have pressure and aggression. And you also need takedown defense as well, because Elias does have a plan B of wrestling in his locker, which I actually think is a decent wrestler. He took down Maheta Santos, he took down Cesar Mutanch, he took down Brad Tavares momentarily as well. So he's got takedowns in his locker. And we saw in the Tim Williams fight with Eryk Anders, Tim Williams was taking Eryk Anders down. He took him down 2 or 3 times in the fight. And Eryk Anders didn't offer too much into his takedown defense either. So I ultimately feel that Elias could probably score takedowns in this fight if he needed to. But it's the volume that's key, because Eryk Anders tends to fall into the pattern of looking for the one shot, the one big bomb, and that just is not going to wash with Elias unless he catches him, obviously. But his style just isn't the right style to be Elias, in my opinion. I think Elias is going to be running away most of the fight, fighting on the back foot, how he does. I think he's going to be throwing kicks, maybe not with huge accuracy, but in the eyes of the judges, hearing the slap on the arm of the opponent, constantly throwing kicks, and even if they're being blocked, the judges will still like that, because it's activity, it's not volume that's landing, it's just strikes thrown. And when a fight's close, judges look for that sort of thing. They'll look for I've said this before in previous podcasts, they look for whoever's got the most damage. I don't think Elias is going to score too much damage on Eryk Anders, but they'll look for volume, they'll look for activity, who looks the fresher at the end of the fight. It's all little things that they'll look for to try and make that decision in between the rounds when they're scoring the fight. So it's all signs pointing to Elias. If Elias is the one moving quicker and making Eryk Anders look visibly frustrated, and just, like I said, just throwing strikes out there, whether they land or not, I just think it's all little things that favour Elias in this fight. Now, Eryk Anders, in my opinion, he needs to knock him out, because even if the fight's really close and it goes to a decision, Elias is fighting at home, man. And these Canadian judges, admittedly, in the last event in Canada, I can't remember a single poor decision. I don't think there was one, and they did score a couple of fights against the Canadian fighters as well, so credit where it's due there. But previously, in other Canadian cards in the UFC, it's been quite notorious for it. The one that sticks out to me is the Carla Esparza and Randa Marcos fight. I thought Esparza clearly won that. Marcos got her hand raised. That's just one example, though. There's been a few. I do feel, though, that this doesn't just go for Canada, it goes for any home fighter. If a fight's so close, where say it's 1-1, and then the one round each definitely, and then there's one round that's really close and could go either way, the chances are at least two judges are gonna score that to the hometown guy. It's just the way it is, we've become so accustomed to it that it's not something that we can sugarcoat anymore. It is what it is, and it happens, and it's something that if you bet in these type of fights, you need to take into consideration. And it's something I personally now take into consideration if I think a fight's going to be close. Taking into consideration everything else around the fight. And one of the final things I think of is, right, well, is this guy fighting a guy who's fighting in front of his own crowd? And I just feel that this is going to be what happens if it goes to a decision and it's close. I personally think it's going to go to a decision and there's going to be no arguments. I think we'll see Elias win 2 out of the 3 rounds, and nobody's going to scream robbery or anything like that. So I've got Elias Theodorou to win, and I've got him to win via decision. Then in the next fight of the night, we've got Katlyn Chookagian versus Jessica Eye. So John, who have you got in this one?
Yeah, this is an interesting fight. Chookagian obviously is on a bit of a tear. She's won her last 3, but prior to that she lost to Liz Carmouche, but then she won every fight besides from that. I did see her name mentioned as a backup for the title fight if anything happened to either the people fighting in the main the co-main event. I'm not sure if that is the case and whether I read that correctly, but
no, there was something along them sort of lines. I don't know whether it got finalised, official, or confirmed, but it's something. You definitely read something because I saw
I did see something like you said. I'm not sure if it did get finalised in the end or not, but yeah, she's a good fighter. She's got good boxing. She's got good output. She's always staying active. She's always like I said, pumping out that jab, pumping out the 1-2s. Jessica Eye, she's turned a corner actually since she moved to flyweight and the flyweight division's been introduced. I think she was one who really suffered with the fact that there was no flyweight division. I mean, she's quite lucky to keep a job in the UFC, losing 5 of 6 fights, 4 on the bounce, albeit they were all against tough opponents. But yeah, since then she's moved down to flyweight, and she's defeated Kalindra Ferreira and obviously Jessica Rose Clark in a last fight. I think again this is going to be a fight that goes to a decision, but I think Chookagian has got more output. I think Jessica Rose likes to flurry. She likes to flurry and then clinch up and try and work strikes in those clinches after she's flurried and closed the distance. But I think Chookagian's just better at keeping range. She'll pump that jab out. It looks good in the judge's eyes because she's constantly throwing shots, and whether they're landing or not, she's always looking like she's the busier fighter. And if she can maintain that range against Eye and not let her close the distance with flurries and get into a clinch or anything like that, I think Chookagian will take the decision in this one.
Yeah, I like Chookagian as a fighter, to be honest. She's predominantly a striker, although she does have a brown belt with Renzo Gracie, I believe it is. Yeah. So, she's not a slouch on the ground either. What I like about her, though, is she can fight moving forwards and backwards. So we saw that in the last fight against Alexis Davis. That was one of the fights that I've just spoken about, actually, in the last breakdown with Elias in regards to a decision in Canada that went against the Canadian, and rightly so, because that's what happened in the Chookagian fight. I was really concerned as well after I bet that fight that a potential wrong decision or close decision might go to Davis, but that wasn't the case. They scored it right, and like I've already mentioned, credit where it's due. Now, the problem I've got with this fight is, well, not with a fight, but the problem I've got with Chookagian and the stylistic matchup here is Jessica Eye, 2-fight win streak. Like you mentioned, she's really benefited from this division being opened. But the way we've seen her win is by takedowns, and it's almost like that she's found that style now, and she's not the type of fighter that will take her opponent down and easily allow her opponent back up. When she shoots a takedown, she's in these last few fights, she's been relatively successful, and she's also managed to enjoy a lot of top time, a lot of control time in these fights as well. Now, you could make the argument of, she's got to take Chookagian, she's got to find Chookagian first, then she's got to take her down, and then she's got to hold her down, and will she be relentless, or will she try and mix the strikes in first to set up the shots? And you've got all these questions you're asking yourself. But one element for me, and this is why it doesn't sit comfortably with me being overly confident in Chookagian in this fight, is the biggest the biggest gap in skill in this fight is on the feet by a mile. By
Yeah.
a country mile, Chookagian is so much better than Jessica Rai on the feet. Technically, speed, accuracy, the lot. Jessica Rai isn't a daft fighter at all. I actually think based on her last two fights, she's a fighter with decent fight IQ that's reading the game well inside the cage. Now, after about 2.5 minutes in this fight, I feel that Jessica Rai is going to realise. I think she'll try and strike first, of course. All fights start standing. She'll feel her way into the fight, and to feel your way into your fight, you've got to strike. So I feel that after 2.5 minutes, she will have that realization if she is not going to win this fight on the feet. And once she has that realization, there's only going to be one thing in her mind, and that's the takedowns. If she can score a takedown and spend a couple of minutes in total on top per takedown, over at least 2 rounds, she's going to win a decision. They're going to score that fight for her if Chookagian can't get back up to her feet, and if Ai's just working on top, doing, like I said before, just enough for the referee not to stand him up and things like that.
Yeah.
I think she's going to be able to do that for 1 round. I think the first round's going to go to Chookagian. I think the feeling out process will almost win Chookagian that first round. In the second round, I think that's when I will, even a corner will be like, right, you need to take her down, and I'll realise, yep, I do. I've already noticed that, and then she'll go for the takedown in round 2. I'm not sure. I'm not going to try and predict like exact things in this fight. I just think either round 2 or 3 she'll have success with a ground game and a top control. And I think the other of those 2 rounds, Chookagian will be able to stay vertical and outstrike Ai for the majority of that round. So ultimately, I'm going with Chookagian to win a 29-28. But like I said, it's just the fact that it's not as if I just don't think the striking will be close, and I'll recognise that, and will only have one thing in her mind, and that doesn't sit right with me when I'm picking one fighter, and I know that fighter's opponent needs the fight to the mat. I just don't like that at all. So I do have Chookagian winning the fight via decision. Now in the next fight of the night, we've got another women's fight. We've got Claudia Gadelha versus Nina Ansaroff. So John, who have you got in this one?
This is an interesting fight. It's a big step up in competition. This for Nina Ansaroff going up against Gadelha, who's challenged for the title on a couple of occasions. Ansaroff's on a nice little win streak herself. Won her last 3 fights. That last fight with Randa Marcos, we broke that fight down, and we spoke about that fight. And Marcos just couldn't get the fight to the ground. Ansaroff was too good. Her takedown defense was too strong. She was no matter what Marcos tried, she just couldn't get the fight to her world where she wanted it, and Ansaroff just outpointed her in that fight. I do feel though that this is probably a step too far too soon. I mean, when you look at some of the people that Ansaroff has lost to, Justine Kish, Juliana Lima in the UFC. And then you look at the people that Gadelha has lost to, Joanna Jędrzejczyk twice, and then Jessica Andrade most recently last year. I mean, they're the elite of the division, and I don't think Ansaroff has fought anybody in the elite of the division yet. I mean, Gadelha's defeated. I know she lost to Andrade the fight before last, but in the last fight she beat Carla Esparza, and the fight before that, before the Andrade fight, she beat Karolina Kowalkiewicz. So she's fighting the top girls in this division, and I think she's going to have too much for Ansaroff. She's aggressive in her striking. She's very well rounded actually. She's good in the clinch. She's got good jiu-jitsu. She's just dangerous all round, and I think that all-round game will be too much for Ansaroff. I think if the fight doesn't go to the mat and if they keep it standing, I think Gadelha's got the better striking. I think Gadelha can take the fight to the mat and do some damage on the ground. I do think Ansaroff will be able to make it back to the feet if they do go to the ground. But Ansaroff has come on leaps and bounds. Obviously, training with Amanda Nunes, her partner, he's always very helpful. But I still believe that Gadelha's skill set wise is better and has the better skill set, and her overall game will will be enough to win this fight. Ansaroff's pretty tough. She's hard to finish. So I think again it's another fight that will go to a decision, but I think it'll end up being a quite comfortable 30-27 across the board to Gadelha.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you've mentioned a lot of points there that I'll echo. So her wrestling's obviously a bread and butter. That's where she really thrives. She's got good jiu-jitsu as well, so a grappling can keep her opponent down as well. And her striking's not all too bad, but again, she's one of those types of wrestlers that her striking's good enough, just good enough to really set up the takedowns exactly how they need it to. So in a striking battle with a lot of fighters, if it was just a kickboxing fight, I'm not sure how well she would actually do, but I'm not saying she's a bad striker either. I just feel that she's a decent enough striker to hang with Ansaroff, definitely. But her striking's tailored to set up the takedowns, which is where she needs the fight to be. That's where she flourishes. I will say one thing though. The one thing that does concern me when Gadelha starts fighting back into the top 5 sort of thing is the damage that she took in that Jessica Andrade fight. I honestly feel that she might not ever be the same fighter again after that damage. It was brutal, and we see it time and time again in this sport where a fighter takes that sort of damage and they just aren't ever the same again. It's sad, but it's true. It's happened. It does happen, and it will continue to happen. I just don't think it's going to matter too much in this fight. I don't think Nina Ansaroff's got the pace, the power, or the aggression to really capitalise or make that apparent or not. I think after this fight with Gadelha, we'll still be thinking, well, did that Andrade fight really take everything out of Gadelha? Did it change her? But we won't know that until she fights another extremely aggressive, extremely powerful, athletic fighter. Like I said, I agree with you on a lot of these points. I think Gadelha is going to win this. I think she's going to win it rather comfortably. I would be really surprised to see Nina Ansaroff get a hand raised in this one. So I've got Claudia Gadelha to win via decision. Then in the next fight of the night, on the main card, we've got Jimi Manuwa against Thiago Maheta Santos. Who have you got in this one, John?
I'm glad this fight got rebooked as well. This is a really exciting fight, really interesting battle between two very exciting fighters who like to stand and trade and inflict as much damage as humanly possible on their opponents. I love Jimi Manuwa. I'm a massive Jimi Manuwa fan. He's from the UK, so we always like to support our own guys. But I do worry now at 38. Is he on the decline? His last fight against Jan Blachowicz, he didn't look the same. He seemed to have lost a little bit of that sharpness, a little bit of that pop in his shots, and obviously, of course, the fight before that, he lost in 20 odd seconds to Volkan Ozdemir. Saying that, he has still got knockout power. We know he's got knockout power. He's shown it time and time again. We saw it against Corey Anderson. We saw it against Ovince Prue. He can beat people with just one shot, but ultimately, I think Santos is going to win this fight. I like Santos. I'm glad that he stayed at light heavyweight after the last bout against Anders. He's a dangerous guy. He's wild with his strikes. He can be knocked out as well. We saw that against David Branch. It's a really interesting fight. I mean, I was umming and ahhing over who I think is going to win this fight, and I do think it will be Santos, but it is close. I mean, there's nothing to say that Jimi Manuwa won't land one of those brutal hooks or uppercuts and put Santos out, because Santos can be finished. But from what I saw in Manuwa's last couple of fights, I mean, he suffered a brutal knockout to Anthony Johnson as well. Then that Ozdemir knockout, and then he just seemed to have lost a bit of his speed, his pop, and his power in the Blachowicz fight. I fancy Santos in this fight, and I fancy Santos to finish him. And I hate to say that because, like I say, I love Jimi Manuwa. But yeah, I think Thiago Santos is. He's got bombs himself. He's got wild kicks. I can see one of those kicks landing and causing some damage, wobbling Manuwa, and then him jumping on him and just hitting him with the ground and pound, or if they're still standing, just flurrying strikes until the ref jumps in. I don't think he'll put Manuwa out cold, but I do think he'll force the referee to intervene, and I do think Santos is going to win this one.
Well, man, first and foremost, I think someone is going to go out cold in this fight. Regardless, I don't think it's going to be a case of a referee jumping in. I think someone's going to get stone cold knocked out, and it could, the fact of the matter is, it could be either of them. The interesting thing is, though, even though, Maheta's moved up from middleweight and to fight Eryk Anders on short notice, and, it looks like he's staying at light heavyweight, which, again, I'm happy that he's doing that. Even though he's the one that's moved up, he's still going to be the much bigger guy in the cage. He's got 2 inches in height over Jimi Manuwa, and just the sheer size of the dude is an absolute monster. But I'm a big fan of Jimi Manuwa as well. Same reasons for you as a UK guy. You always support your own guys. And he's been a guy that's been around for years. Got a good record, 17-4, knockout power. Knocking 15 out of 17 wins have come by knockout. It's like, how can you not love a guy like that? And then even when you look at his 4 losses, 3 out of those 4 losses have been by knockout. So he's one of those guys where he must just look across the cage, and it's like, it's me or you. Let's see. And you're always gonna love those sort of guys. Ultimately, though, I agree with you. I think Jimi Manuwa, 38 now, I think he's lost a bit of his speed. He's lost a bit of his movement. He's lost a bit of his durability, and it's all bad signs when you're coming in the cage against a beast in Maheta Santos. Everyone that you talk to that trains with him, nobody's got a bad word to say about him in regards to his fighting ability. And yeah, I think this is a really bad spot for Manuwa. Having said that, though, even though he is on the decline, in my opinion, I think it's quite visible. I think a lot of people will agree with that. Even though he's on the decline, the thing that goes last, what is it? It's power. And, does he hit harder than David Branch? Yes. Has he got better striking technique than David Branch? Yes. Yeah. Is he quicker than David Branch even right now? Probably yes. So, man, he could land. He could definitely land on Maheta. But, to make your pick, you've got to take everything into consideration. What if Maheta comes out and takes him down? Just to nullify that straight away. Jimi Manuwa was fucked at that point, because Maheta will just roll on the mat completely. And, I think it's a bad spot for Manuwa, but man, do not be surprised if Maheta Santos is on his back looking up at the bright lights in the UFC octagon. But yeah, I've got Maheta Santos to win. I've got him to win by knockout. And then in the next fight of the night, we've got one that interests me a lot as well, actually. We've got Hakeem Dawodu versus Kyle Bochniak. So what have you got in this one, John?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. Dawodu, I'm still unsure of. Obviously, we haven't seen much of him in the UFC. He came from World Series of Fighting, where he was beating everybody, and then he came to the UFC and lost that opening fight against Danny Henry. I think that was back in London, if I remember correctly, and lost it very quickly in the first round. He got dropped, and then Danny Henry jumped onto a guillotine and put him to sleep with that guillotine. He came back from that loss to defeat Austin Arnett, and he looked a lot better in that fight. But no offense to Austin Arnett, he's not a world beater. I can't see him ever challenging at the top end of the division unless he changes things up. So how I base that victory in the grand scheme of things, I'm not too sure yet. I mean, he did have a considerable speed advantage. He's quick, his strikes are fast, are crisp. He was landing some very heavy lead kicks on Arnett as well. Those nasty calf kicks that we talk about so often, just below the knee, inside and outside low kicks as well. Karl Bochniak, he's a fun guy. I mean, every fight that he's in, he's fun. Especially his last fight against Zabit Magomedsharipov. That was a great fight. A lot of people were expecting Magomedsharipov to walk through him, and it really was an entertaining fight, that one. I believe it won Fight of the Night back at UFC 223 as well. He'll mix up. He's got that wild striking style that I talk about. And when I talk about that, I mean like they lunge in with 3 or 4 quite wild hooks. Not very technical, but he's that kind of guy. We saw that in the Brandon Davis fight. He was throwing flurries. He eventually won that decision. That was quite a close fight, actually. I watched that fight back this past weekend, and that was quite a close fight. He worked very hard for the takedown against Davis and did land a couple, but Davis got back up to his feet quite quickly. So yeah, he does like to mix in those flurries to push his opponent against the cage, and then work for the takedown. He'll work either the double leg, and he's got quite a good single leg, which we saw against Brandon Davis. This is another fight I think that could be very entertaining. Could be a potentially exciting scrapper. Ultimately, I'm going with Karl Bochniak in this one. I mainly due to the fact that I haven't seen enough from Dawodu so far for me to comfortably pick him. I know that Danny Henry fight ended very quickly, but like I say, he did get dropped. That means that he is hittable. Yeah, and Austin Arnett had some success as well, especially in the second round. First round was pretty much all Dawodu, but after that, Austin Arnett did land some shots, and he was landing that jab. But for every jab that he was landing on Dawodu, Dawodu was landing 2 or 3 strikes back on Arnett. So ultimately went on to win the decision. But he can get hit, and we've seen that in his 2 fights in the UFC so far. Karl Bochniak can hit his opponents. We've seen that in his last few fights, and I think that's what he'll do. I think he'll flurry. I think he will land shots on Dawodu. He'll make it a scrap. He'll make it scrappy. He'll make it a brawl like the Magomedsharipov fight. As soon as Dawodu's back's against the cage, he'll press him for the takedown and work for takedowns. And even if he doesn't get that takedown, he just makes it ugly and grinding. And then once they separate, he'll wait for the opportune moment to flurry again. And ultimately, I think that is what will get him the decision win in this fight. If Dawodu can land those leg kicks and land them early and create the same sort of damage and have the same sort of impact that they did in the Arnett fight, because he's really tearing up that leg at one point. It can be a different story, but he'll need to do that early and he'll need to do that often. But yeah, ultimately, I think Karl Bochniak's going to win this one. I think it's going to go to a decision, and he's going to take the decision.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you in respect to you saying, we've not seen too much of Dawodu. I mean, I'm glad that we saw 3 rounds of him against Austin Arnett. I know the competition's questionable, but I think that even though he's he's not, we haven't seen it, like we said, we haven't seen a great deal of him, and we haven't seen him against anybody like really high level.
Yeah,
he's beating what's in front of him, and I still, for me anyway, personally, I can still get a good grasp of how good his Muay Thai is. He's coming from a Muay Thai background, but obviously that has to transition into MMA as well. So I personally feel that I've got a good grasp of where his striking, where the level of his striking is at, and I actually think it's at quite a high level. What he throws is he throws hard shots. He's ridiculously quick. He's accurate. He's powerful. And it's just your typical Muay Thai fighter, really. And I do feel that even though, like I said, I've already said already that the competition he's been fighting isn't being high level, I still think we've seen enough from him to be able to gauge where his level of striking is at. Now, the other points that I agree with is regards to him being hittable, specifically straight down the pipe is where he tends to be more vulnerable. So maybe Bochniak's must have seen that and, must adopt that sort of strike. If he starts throwing all his shots down the middle, he's clearly seen in tape that that's where Dawodou's quite deficient. But now we know what Bochniak is. We know what he brings. We've seen it time and time again. I don't think, he has mentioned that he's found his style now and things like that. Who knows what that is, or if he's, just throwing a bluff. He's been at TriStar, but I don't read too much into that because he went for a week, and then I think he took 1 or 2 weeks back off at home and then went back for 1 more week. So he's only had 2 weeks there, and it wasn't 2 consecutive weeks either. So I can't really put too much stock into that. But we know what he brings. He's one of those fighters that's ugly, gritty, dirty grinder, and I know that sounds really disgusting, but man, I like those type of fighters. Those type of fighters are exactly what I like to see in mixed martial arts. But I just don't think that Kyle Bochniak, that type of fighter, is someone that's going to expose someone like Dawodu 100%. But I just don't think Bochniak's that is going to be the fighter to expose him in this fight. Now, you look at Bochniak's record in the UFC, it says 3-2. We all know it's 1-4. He didn't win that Barzola fight. And, I don't know anybody that scored that fight to Bochniak. But then if you're arguing that, then you can also, I'm also happy to take the Zabit Magomed Sharipov fight off his record, because that dude will beat pretty much everyone in the division. So then you're looking at a 1-3 guy in the UFC with that 1 win coming against Brandon Davis, which in my opinion wasn't a clear-cut fight. It was quite a close fight. And
it's
I
very
think
close
it was
fight,
one of those, when it went to a decision, I did score it for Bochniak, but if it went the other way, I don't think there'd have been anybody screaming robbery, even though it was unanimous. So it was a close fight against Brandon Davis. So, I mean, one's going to argue that Austin Arnett wasn't the greatest of competition for Dawodu. Well, one could also argue that Brandon Davis isn't the greatest competition for
very true.
For Kyle Bochniak. So then I'll go back and look at the Steven Siler fight. Now, this fight for me is really key in tape, because although Siler and Bochniak have a different level of pressure, I think Bochniak's the more aggressive pressure fighter. Steven Siler brought a game plan in against Hakeem Dawodu that Kyle Bochniak will adopt. So the exact type of fight, trying to clinch up, trying to make it ugly, trying to get the fight to the mat. Now, there's a few things that Dawodu got exposed with. So he did show earlier on in that Steven Siler fight that he could be taken down quite easily. Showed his back, gave his back quite a few times as well. But then he showed really good back defense and really good rear naked choke defense, and got out of those positions more comfortable than you would see from most other fighters in the UFC. Normally, when someone takes you back in the UFC or in mixed martial arts, they'll normally stay there for quite a while. But Dawodu was calm, composed, defended, did exactly what he needed to do, and got back up to his feet. So it's almost like you don't want to put yourself in those positions, and that's definitely a cause for concern. But he can get himself out of those positions should he fuck up. Now, in that fight, the longer the fight went on, the better his takedown defense became. The more he could get his striking off. You could see that he could strike moving backwards as well as moving forwards, which is going to be key for me in this fight. When his back was very close to the cage, he recognised where he was inside the cage. He wrapped up the plum clinch and then started moving forward with knees, being aggressive, just getting himself out of that position. I just think that Dawodu's got all the tools in his arsenal to defend against an average grinder type fighter in mixed martial arts, which that is exactly how I would describe Bochniak. I don't think is an amazing fighter. Obviously he's a high level of UFC, and I joke about this and say this every single week. I'm slobbed on my sofa now, breaking fights down. So it's a little unfair of me to throw this sort of criticism at a professional fighter that that would whoop my ass every day of the week, a billion times out of a billion. But I'm just comparing the fighters to the other level of competition in the UFC. So I just think compared to the other level of competition in UFC, Bochniak is very average. And I just think Dawodu's got the tools to nullify that and to get his own game off. And the other thing you mentioned as well, John, is the leg kicks. They're brutal. They were brutal against Siler as well. I think he needs to get them off early, quickly, if he wants to make this an easier fight for himself. However, worst case scenario for me, in my opinion, is if Bochniak is en route to get a win, it's going to be a very close decision. I think categorically that's fair. Like, I don't think he's going to go out there and dominate Hakeem. I don't think he's going to go out there and knock him out. If he goes out there, it's going to be to win, it's going to be a very close decision. Hakeem's the hometown fighter. It brings us back to the same thing I mentioned about Elias. If this fight is 1-1 going into that third round, or even just over the 3 rounds, it's 1-1, and if one round is really close and it's really clear for the other two, and the judges have got to make a decision, I think at least 2 judges are going to score it for the hometown guy, unless it is very obvious that Bochniak won 2 rounds. But then, like I say, that would have to be a dominant win, and I just don't think he's got a dominant win in his locker against someone like Dawodu, who can game plan against that style, who is a good technical striker. And we've seen it as well lately. And the example that I'm going to use is Jermaine D. Randami against Raquel Pennington. That's a dirty, ugly grinder against a fighter that doesn't really have too much off a back, and predominantly a Chris Muay Thai striker. And Jermaine D. Randami, that type of technical fighter tends to beat the grind style of fighter more often than not. So I'm siding with Dawodu in this fight. I think he's going to get it done. I think it is going to be a decision. He's not going to put Bochniak away. He's tough as shit, man. I think it'll either be a dominant decision, a 29-28. I think Bochniak will take a round in this fight, or I think it'll be a close fight where we may even be looking at this fight thinking, yeah, Bochniak might take this, and then they give it to Dawodu anyway. So I've got Hakeem Dawodu to win via decision. Then in the next fight of the night, we've got another really, really good fight. We've got Alex Cowboy Oliveira versus the returning Gunnar Nelson. So John, who have you got in this one?
Yeah, like you said, I really like this fight. That if anybody out there follows any of the stuff that I do on Fight Post, but I quite often do pieces of what's next for winners after events, etc. And after Alex Oliveira's last win against Carlo Pedersoli, this was the fight I was calling for. I really like this fight stylistically between the two, and the position that they're both in the division at the moment. Obviously, Oliveira's only suffered 1 defeat in about his last 7 or 8 fights, coming against Yancy Medeiros 3 fights ago. He bounced back from that defeat with wins over Carlos Condit and that ultra quick finish of Carlo Pedersoli only back in September. He's a dangerous guy. He's strong. He hits hard. He's dangerous. If the fight goes to the mat, he can win by a number of methods, and he's going up against Gunnar Nelson, who mainly specialises in his jiu-jitsu. He's very good black belt, very dangerous guy off his back, very dangerous guy when he's on top of you with his submissions. If he takes you back, he'll more often than not finish you with a rear naked choke. He's got that guillotine in his locker as well. We saw that against Alan Jouban. I think it was the Alan Jouban fight as well, where he set that up with his strikes, and he landed some very heavy shots on the way to picking up the guillotine.
It was a nice chicken dance for sure.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Yeah. Obviously, we spoke about his last fight against Santiago Ponzinibbio on the podcast a couple of weeks ago for Ponzinibbio's fight. Should it have been overturned? We don't see many results overturned, but we did mention there was 2 or 3 very clear eye pokes on the way to that defeat. So there's an argument there that he could have been overturned. Obviously, he didn't. The loss is on his record. So it's interesting. I don't know if anyone. I don't know if you've seen on social media this week as well. Nelson is looking absolutely ripped for this fight. He's looking in absolutely fantastic shape.
He's jacked on.
Oh, definitely the best shape I've seen him in by a country mile. I know he is a strong advocate of not cutting weight, and he does fight very, very close to his walk around weight. I don't know if he's broken his own rule for this, or whether he's just cut down some mass and he's just now ripped to shreds, but he's looking an absolute beast going into this fight. And I fancy Gunnar Nelson in this fight to get back in the win column. We know from his stand-up style, he's got that karate style, that in and out. Obviously, trains at SBG. Obviously, the comparisons are going to be made to Conor McGregor, very light on their feet and in and out with the shots. But I do think Nelson's a good wrestler as well. I do think Nelson at some point in this fight will be able to get the fight to the mat. And when he does, he's dangerous there, and he can hold you down. He can take you back. He's got nice seamless transitions. He will transition to you back. Alex Cowboy Oliveira has been submitted. He lost against Donald Cerrone via triangle. He lost against Gilbert Burns via armbar. So so if the fight goes to the mat and Nelson's on his back, Nelson's dangerous in his guard, and as we've seen, Cowboy Oliveira can be submitted when he's on top and in his opponent's guard. Will Oliveira land one of his heavy strikes on Nelson? Possibly. We saw obviously Nelson in his last fight be really rocked for the very first time. Will that have any long-standing effect? I don't know. Like I say, I think the eye pokes played a very heavy part in that stoppage as well. So whether he would have been able to weather the storm if those hadn't happened, it's all speculation and shoulda, woulda, coulda. But yeah, ultimately I'm going with Gunnar Nelson in this fight. I think he'll be able to get the fight to the mat at some point. I think he's dangerous off his on the ground. He's very, very good submission artist, and I do think at some point over the course of the 3 rounds he will be able to take the back and lock in a rear naked choke. And I think he'll probably be the second round. I think the first round will play out more on the feet, and then in the second round I think whether he sets it up with his strikes or whether he just catches Oliveira coming in and level changes and gets the fight to the mat and then eventually works his way and takes the back. But I think Gunnar Nelson's going to win this fight, and I think he's going to get the submission win.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning as well, just straight off the bat, that he hasn't been at SBG for this camp at all. Yeah. He's gone back to Molnier. Yeah. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but it's basically Iceland's super gym, and apparently the work ethic really there is really good. The level of training partners and competition there is also really good as well. So it sounds like, and he's also happy being at home. So it just sounds like that was the right fit for him rather than going back to.
Just jumping in there. Sorry, I know a lot of the guys from Renegade in Birmingham go to Mjolnir quite a lot and do a lot of training up there. Work a lot of jiu-jitsu. In turn, I think they probably also work the stand-ups with the likes of Tom Breeze and stuff. I know he's been several times and trained with Gunnar Nelson. Another very good black belt from Renegade, Tom Coffey. I know he goes up and trains there. So I know they do get guys in there, very good guys as well, UFC caliber guys. I know Tom Breeze has been up quite a lot. Just jumping back in. Sorry, there on the.
No, it's cool, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, going up to the back to his roots in Iceland.
For sure. And the second thing I want to mention is today what I did is I rewatched the fight with Ponzinibbio, and I wanted to see how bad the fouls were. And basically I watched the fight and then I realised afterwards, like, what the fuck, I didn't see anything. So what I did is I just typed something along those sort of lines into Google, like Nelson, eye poke, Ponzinibbio, something to bring up some search results. And there was actually a really cool video on YouTube. There's a couple actually. One's like a black, you'll spot it straight away. It's like a black and white version of replay of the fight, and what the creators of those videos have done is just outlined the individual fouls in slow motion and then zoomed in so you could actually see it.
I think I have seen that.
Yeah. So the first one came when Gunnar Nelson actually rocked Ponzinibbio, which in my opinion is quite a surprise. You know, we've not really seen Ponzinibbio in that much trouble in the past, but he rocked him. But as he landed as Gunnar Nelson landed the uppercut, Ponzinibbio threw that left hand out and poked Nelson quite badly in the eye. Now, listening to some interviews and stuff after with Gunnar Nelson, I'm telling you now, you can say what you want. He might be making excuses. He could be lying. You know, that's always a possibility. I give the guy the benefit of the doubt. He doesn't strike me as a dirty fighter or a cheater or someone that's going to lie or anything like that.
Yeah.
So basically, what you were saying after that first eye poke is it affected him, and he was sort of seeing maybe a little bit of double vision. He got hit and rocked with a punch from Ponzinibbio shortly after that, so he could have potentially been seeing double as he got rocked by Ponzinibbio. Now, this is when it all starts getting a bit worse. So first the pulling of the shorts as Gunnar Nelson's tried to circle out and angle away and just get himself out of danger. Obviously, he's clearly rocked at this point. Potentially, we're seeing double vision before, so that could even be fucking triple vision after getting rocked. So then he pulls his shorts back. So that's foul number 2. And then this is the disgusting one, because he throws a left hand out, and then he sticks his right hand out to Gunnar Nelson's left eye, and his index finger fucking eye hooks Gunnar Nelson. It's disgusting. Like like what you've just done then, that sort of reaction. I had that reaction when I saw it. I was just like, oh my God. And you don't see this in real time. Like, you don't see it at all. Even I tried to replay it in real time after I'd seen the slow motion version. You still don't see it. So I don't blame the referee, by the way, for also not seeing this, because I've watched it 2 or 3 times knowing sort of where it's going to happen, and you still can't see it. But it is dirty, man. It is very, very dirty. And I think I'm just thinking about it's actually the other eye as well to the first eye poke that was potentially seeing double vision. So at that point, Ponzinibbio would have finished any man on the planet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It'd have been near his visibility. I don't even know what percentage it would have been at. He wasn't too bothered about the fight being overturned in regards to the record. You know, it happened. From what I heard, it was sort of the people around him that was pushing for it rather than himself. But first and the point I'm trying to make is there's some arguments out there. There's some debates, and that's fine. Some people say that the knockout happened because of the pokes, or it wouldn't have made a difference. I'm telling you now, in my opinion, it is fact. It's fact. Ponzinibbio knocked him out in that moment because of those eye pokes. If those eye pokes didn't happen, I believe, and this is an opinion now, and this is just speculating, but I do believe that Gunnar Nelson probably would have got out of that danger. He may not have even been hit by the original punch that rocked him if it wasn't for that first eye poke. So there was a lot of things leading up into that fight, and I'm not saying Ponzinibbio wouldn't have beaten him. He may well have knocked him out at some point in that fight. It was a 5-round fight. He could have definitely knocked him out at some point.
Yeah.
But I just believe in that moment, Ponzinibbio only knocked him out because of the fouls. Now, breaking this fight down, because I know I've just spent a lot of time on that, it's just something that I watched earlier, and I just feel that I wanted to get off my chest because there has been some debate, and I really wanted a solid input from my point of view as well. But into this fight, I love both guys. I've cashed on both guys big in the past. So I really don't dislike any of the fighters. We've got 2 fighters that predominantly come out in a karate stance. Gunnar Nelson definitely does. Oliveira Cowboy seems to be doing it a lot more lately. Now, they're the same height, but Cowboy is longer in regards to his arm and leg reach. I think it might be a decent difference in that as well, but it'll be apparent in the cage, in my opinion. So Gunnar Nelson is not going to want to be on the outside. He's going to need to get inside. But the advantage that I think Gunnar Nelson has in regards to fighting somebody like Cowboy, even though he's going to have to get inside, is Cowboy doesn't pack volume. I'm also not necessarily saying that he looks for the one bomb either, but he doesn't pack a lot of volume, so that's going to help someone like Gunnar Nelson. Against Ponzinibbio, in hindsight, it was a bad stylistic fight for him because Ponzinibbio's aggressive. He hits hard, he has volume, he's durable, he's got good takedown defense. These are all things that you need to beat someone like Gunnar Nelson, and Ponzinibbio, he had that. And I bet Gunnar Nelson that night as well. I'm not salty or anything like that. I lost the bet. And I actually think without the eye pokes and everything, considering what we now know of Ponzinibbio and the points I've just mentioned, I think he would have lost anyway, and I think he would lose again if he fought him. But Alex Cowboy Oliveira doesn't have all of those qualities. He has some, so he hits hard. He can be quite aggressive and come forward. But the reason I'm siding with Gunnar Nelson in this fight to win, and the reason why is I think Gunnar Nelson is going to be able to take Cowboy down. Condit took Cowboy down. Will Brooks took Cowboy down. I know that fight there was 4 takedowns apiece, but the fact of the matter is Cowboy can be taken down. Ryan LaFleur took Cowboy down, and when Cowboy gets taken down, he doesn't usually get back up, and these are against grapplers that are not on the level of Gunnar Nelson. And Cowboy does a couple of things on the mat that I think are quite is going to be quite apparent in this fight, and it's also a deficiency for him as well. Is he doesn't use technique to get back up to his feet, so he uses explosive power. So he waits and waits and waits, and he'll explode quickly.
Yeah.
When he explodes quickly, he tends to make mistakes. So, as in like ground errors. So he'll give his back, or he'll give up mount by trying to do it. And not only is he giving up position, not only is he using bad technique to try and stand up to his feet, but he's also wasting energy and wasting cardio, and that's not good against someone like I'm about to say Roy Nelson. Then that definitely wouldn't be good. That's not good for someone like Gunnar Nelson being on top of you, because that guy is not someone that will sit heavy on you. So when Cowboy is exploding and trying to get out of position, Nelson will float on top. He'll float, and he'll let you do whatever you want with your hips. He'll let you move it left or right or whatever, because ultimately he will gain a better position from it. Whereas some of these fighters, like LaFleur for example, he's quite heavy on top. So when Cowboy exploded, LaFleur was like, "No, son, not today." Bang, straight back down. Used his strength, used his size and physique advantage. Gunnar Nelson won't do that. He'll let Cowboy explode in whichever way he wants, but because he's floating on top, his position on top will remain. He'll get a better position should he choose to, should he see the opportunity. And I think at some point he's going to get that back of Cowboy Oliveira, and I think he's going to choke him. So I've got Gunnar Nelson to win this fight. I've got him to win by submission. Is it out the realms of possibility that Cowboy starches him with a shot? No, I don't think it is. But unless Cowboy's got that volume, I've got a funny feeling Gunnar Nelson's just going to be comfortable on his feet. He's going to see the shots coming. He's going to be able to evade them and get out of the way. Like I said, if Cowboy was he comes out really aggressive and really puts the pressure on Gunnar and starts throwing plenty of volume at him, then you've got to be worried for Gunnar in that spot. But I can only go on what I see, and I think it's going to be a bit of a chess match on the feet with the stances. I think it is going to be sort of one shot at a time for each of them. And it actually wouldn't surprise me if the finish happened similar to Joban, because we have seen Cowboy rocked, we have seen him dropped. It wouldn't surprise me if Gunnar Nelson has that sneaky power, catches Cowboy, puts him down, and then takes his back. So I've got Gunnar Nelson to win. I've got him to win via submission. Then in the next fight of the night, we've got the co-main event of the evening. We've got Valentina Shevchenko versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Now this is a fight that, in my opinion, has been a long time coming. It may be too late, maybe here too late, but this is a fight we've been calling for a long time. They've got history, they've got previous with each other in Muay Thai back in the day, albeit, but man, there's a load of cool things surrounding this fight. So who have you got to win, John?
Yeah, this is a really good fight. This is an exciting one between two very good strikers, and I think it's going to be a fight that we see playing out on the feet for pretty much the entirety of the contest. I saw an interesting stat actually just before we started recording this podcast that fighters who have come down from bantamweight to flyweight, female fighters that come down from bantamweight to flyweight are currently I think it was 6-1 against those who obviously are either coming up from strawweight as young Jacek is, or who are just coming and competing at naturally at flyweight. So that's I thought was quite interesting given this matchup. Obviously, Shevchenko had a couple of bites at the cherry against Nunes. Obviously, the one fight was a non-title fight that she lost, but her most recent outing against her was for the title. I thought that was a very close fight. I haven't actually watched it back since the original since I originally watched it. At the time, I had the fight scored for Shevchenko, and I know Shevchenko was very upset with the result. I don't know if you've watched it back since. I actually haven't watched it back, but yeah, I was very surprised about that. Well, wasn't very surprised, very close fight, but I did have Shevchenko to win that fight. She bounced back from that fight with a win over Kuchera in her debut at flyweight. That was back in February, so she's been out of action since then. She's had a couple of cancelled bouts, but yeah, this is an interesting fight because I mean, where is Joanna Jędrzejczyk now? Where is she was such a dominant champion for a long time. I know she's come back from those two Rose Namajunas losses to Tesha Torres, but I think young Jacek had a very good stylistic matchup against Torres. Torres very small. Jacek can work very well from the outside. Good, strong kicking game, as we know, and yeah, it's interesting to see how she'll come into this fight because she was so dominant and so many people didn't ever expect to see her lose, and then obviously we saw what Namajunas did, and then they had the rematch after JJ had put it down to a bad weight cut in their first meeting at UFC 217 and put it down to the bad cut, and then they rematched at UFC 223, and Namajunas, although JJ did come back into that fight and was very strong in that fight, and it was a lot closer than it originally looked. She still came out as obviously as losing that fight, and then I think this was the right decision for her to move up to flyweight because I don't think she'll be getting a shot against Namajunas anytime soon. So it's the right decision. Which fighter does this weight class suit better? It'll be interesting to see. Will JJ have the slight speed advantage coming up in weight from Shevchenko? I don't know. I mean, Shevchenko looked crisp and looked sharp in her last outing. I know they've met in the, like you say, in the Muay Thai scene back in the day. I know that was quite a long time ago. So it'd be interesting to see how they've come on and developed since those days. I think Shevchenko he's going to win this fight. I think it's going to be another one to add to the record of bantamweights coming down. I think coming down from bantamweight, I think she'll hold slightly more power. Speed wise, I don't think they'll be too dissimilar. And yeah, I just think her all-round game and where she's mentally will also play a part in this. Obviously, we know that she's a very strong character and she's very confident in her own abilities. We've seen that time and time again. She quite often states that she's the best in the world, and even after the second Rose Namajunas loss, she still kept stating that she was the best in the world.
Well, if you don't believe in yourself, who's gonna?
Exactly, yeah. But you've got to think that going into another title fight, in the back of her mind, he'll be thinking, oh, well, this will be 3 in a row in quite a short period of time as well. Will that play some part? Possibly, yes. I do think this is going to be another fight that goes decision. I think it's going to be very close again, like like the JJ against Namajunas fight, and like the Shevchenko against the JJ against Namajunas fight, and the Shevchenko against the Amanda Nunes fight. Both very close decision. I think this is going to be another close decision. I think it could be scored one of these that we see split decision across the board, 48-47s, and yeah, it's going to play out on the feet, and ultimately it's going to be a case of who lands the cleaner shots and who is the more aggressive fighter. I do think Shevchenko is going to win. It's going to be very close. I think Shevchenko can play aggressor and counter striker, which will help her, because I think when JJ pushes forward, I think Shevchenko can catch her and circle off and score in the judges' eyes. And yeah, it's going to be very close, but I'm going with Shevchenko to win this.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a lot closer than the line suggests as well. You know, Valentina Shevchenko currently sitting at -350, and there's a book that's got
definitely close.
Yeah, there's a book that's got Joanna and Jacek at nearly +300, which is just fucking ridiculous, man. Like,
that is crazy.
I don't understand how the line's that wide. I also as well, you know, I joked about they've met 3 times before in Muay Thai back in the day. That was like 30 years ago, man. For what it's worth, Valentina took all 3, so that's what people try and use, but it's absolutely irrelevant. Like, it couldn't be any more irrelevant to this fight than what it is. So, in regards to style versus style, I agree. I think it's going to be a close fight. I think that one thing that Joanna struggled with physically and then towards the end mentally was a really tough, really harsh weight cut. And there's even that video, I don't even know if it's on the internet anymore, that got leaked of, this is going to sound wrong to start with, but please let me finish, of Joanna in the bathtub. And with the team, you know, she was foiled up, she was crying, and man, it was honestly disturbing, really disturbing to see. And I'm sure, I don't know if it was the UFC or someone else forced the video to be taken down, but unfortunately for that body, whoever it was, I can't remember, that video had already been seen by, you know, thousands of people. So so yeah, the one, like I say, the one tough part of Joanna's game was that weight cut, which she's not going to have now, maybe even not at all. You know, I don't even know if she's going to have to cut anything. Who knows? But so there's that straight away, which she already had good cardio and good volume and output. So one can only assume that with no weight cut, her volume could potentially be even better. Her cardio could potentially be even better. And yeah, like I say, I think it's going to be a close fight. Valentina Shevchenko's got also great tools, she, like, you know, Muay Thai background, same as Joanna. Like I say, they were in the same circuit years and years ago, so they both got a similar style in regards to the stand-up. Then you move on to the ground game. Shevchenko's got the better ground game. She will be the one that out the two that will look to get the fight to the mat. But then Joanna's shown decent takedown defense, and when she has been taken down, she stood back up relatively quickly as well. She did that against Gadelha, who we mentioned earlier is a great wrestler and got a good grappler to keep her fighters down to the mat. Well, she couldn't keep Joanna down for too long when they fought years ago. So it's an interesting one. The fight is going to be won and lost on the feet, in my opinion. I think if it does go to the ground and Shevchenko can keep Joanna down, then she could end up potentially finishing the fight there somehow, or just keep repeating those takedowns once she knows that she can get Joanna down. But I think that's a bit of a stretch. I think it will take place on the feet, and I hope it does, because I could see an exciting fight. I'm very torn on this. I'm going to be picking Shevchenko. I think form, mentality, and just I think she's going to be the bigger fighter on fight night, the bigger woman inside the cage. So for those reasons, I'm going to go with Valentina to win the title. She has looked great lately, but I know it's been against fighters that aren't the best competition. So Joanna's going to be the best fighter she's fought since Amanda Nunes. which actually wasn't that long ago, to be fair. Yeah, I think Valentina's going to win the fight. It's not a confident pick. Would it surprise me if Joanna won? Absolutely not. Is plus 300 a mental line that, I'm not going to hate anybody for taking? Absolutely. It is a mental line, and absolutely not am I going to hate it. So, yeah, I've got Valentina Shevchenko to win. I think she's going to get it done by decision. Now, in the next fight of the night, in the main event of the evening, we've got, finally, hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll find out on by Friday evening, Max Holloway versus Brian Ortega. Who have you got, John?
Oh, man. Are you going to make me pick between these two? Because these are two guys I absolutely love.
There's no sitting on the fence on this one.
There's no sitting on the fences. There's not on this podcast. Yeah, two guys I absolutely love. Two absolute beasts. I mean, they've both come from the stories are out there about Brian Ortega's background and things, and being brought up in the hood, and Max Holloway from the tough streets of Hawaii. I mean, and it really shows in their fighting style and what they're like when they step foot in the octagon. One of the main question marks is what condition will Max Holloway be in? Obviously, there's the whole incident previously where there's talk of he'd had some kind of stroke and all sorts of. I don't know if you've seen anything more from it, but
they've ruled out everything.
Yeah,
but they don't know. There's still stuff. Apparently, there's still investigations going on, but from what we're aware as of yesterday, when Max Holloway did his last interview, nobody knows. The doctors don't know. He doesn't know. Nobody knows.
That's crazy. I saw something that he was getting his lawyers involved with something, and I was like, well, I don't know what they're going to be getting involved with.
Yeah, I mean, but that was before they ruled that out.
Okay.
They were trying to say that it could have been some sort of illness that was caused by potential food poisoning. So
right, okay,
I think they were looking at with the whole lawyers thing. This, if I remember it rightly, anyway, it was something along those sort of lines, and looking at where he was eating his food before the fight, and they think someone might have purposely or intentionally done something to his food. But then apparently now that's been completely ruled out by the doctors as well. They just don't know. They don't know. And for me, that's more scary than knowing what it was, if it was something really bad,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. If you're getting these kind of, because
how can you rectify it? How can you make sure in this weight cut that it doesn't go the same way as it did last time? If they don't know, they can't. Failing at something or doing something badly in life isn't a bad thing. It just means you can learn from it. But if you don't know what's gone wrong, then you can't do anything to try and make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah,
it's worrying, man.
Definitely. The scenario it reminds you of, I think it was Ian McCall. I'm sure it's Ian McCall, and he said that when he was cutting weight and stuff, he just kept getting loads of health issues, blackouts and things like that, and he had tests and things, and the doctors just didn't know what it was. But every time he'd go to cut weight and prepare for the fights, the same thing would happen. It'd just be like his body would start to shut down. And I imagine these things happen in this sport. A lot of fighters cut a lot of weight, and over time, that must have a massive impact on a fighter's body and their condition, their long-term condition and conditioning, and that's the main question mark that hangs over this fight. What condition is Max Holloway going to come in? We know he's an absolute beast. He's a warrior. So, like you say, if we do start to see, well, we may not see ourselves, but if the similar sort of symptoms occur in the weight cut, this fight, he's a real tough guy. So I hope he has a good team around him that isn't afraid to pull him if the same sort of thing happens again. Because I imagine he's the kind of guy that will go in there and fight anybody, no matter.
It'll be the doctors that pull him. the final step, and he's well, I don't know this 100%, but I would have a very solid guess that he's going to be very heavily monitored during 5 weeks.
You definitely hope so. Definitely hope so. Going on to the actual fight itself and the stylistic matchup, T-City, Brian Ortega, he's a very, very dangerous black belt. He can find submissions out of pretty much anywhere. He's got a really dangerous guillotine. We saw that against Cub Swanson and Renato Moicano. He can win fights when it looks like he's going to lose the fight. We saw that against Clay Guida. He can turn fights around and get wins when his back's against the wall and time's running out. His hands are improving. We saw that against Frankie Edgar. We haven't seen anyone do that to Frankie Edgar and finish him so brutally, but he showed lovely hands in that fight and head movement and landed that massive shot coming off the clinch, I think it was. So Brian Ortega, and he's still only both these guys are still only very young, 27 years old. They're both improving. I think Ortega's improving more than Holloway. I think Holloway's got more mileage on the clock, just his fight style, and he started fighting in the UFC when he was only about 19 years old, if I remember. I think 2012 was his debut in the UFC. So I mean, that's 6 years. So 21 years old he was when he made his debut. He's the kind of guy that he's very well rounded. We spoke about this already tonight with other fighters. He's very well rounded. He's a very dangerous striker. He's got tremendous heart. He's got a tremendous chin. He's got power. He's got accumulation in his hands. He just keeps throwing shots, and we saw that in the two Aldo fights. His most recent two victories. He just throws that much. Throws that often and has that much pressure, and he's just so relentless that he both times he just wore Aldo down, and we saw it in the Anthony Pettis fight as well. I know Anthony Pettis was coming down and from lightweight, and he seemed to move back up. It probably wasn't the best decision for him, especially cardio wise, but we saw it in that fight as well. He just wears people down. You can stand in front of him, you can hit him with everything that you have, and he'll just stand in front of you. And I saw a fantastic little clip on Twitter this week. It was of Aldo landing a brutal uppercut, and Max Holloway literally just laughs and gives him a round. Stands a yard away from him, laughs and gives him a round of applause. And it's he catches him clean with that uppercut. It's not a glancing shot. He lands clean, a heavy uppercut, and he just stands there and takes it. Like I say, will what happened in the build to the last fight and the health concerns, will that play an impact though? Will he be able to take the shots as well as he has been able to previously? There's a big question mark hanging over it, and for that reason, I'm going with T-City in this one. I think Ortega is going to extend his unbeaten run. I think we're going to see a new champion. It's going to be a close fight, and I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if Max Holloway does win this fight, because I think Max Holloway is the much better technical striker. But Ortega just seems to find ways to win a fight, and we've seen that time and time again. I mean, the one that really stands out to me is Cub Swanson. That was a fight where I know Swanson's on the decline, and he's not a fighter at the level he has done years gone by. But I mean, he just jumped on Swanson's neck and just how quickly and ferociously Cub Swanson was tapping in that fight. It just goes to show how dangerous Ortega is with his submissions anywhere, whether the fight's standing, whether he gets the fight to the ground. And added to that, now that he has got he's improving with his hands, and which we saw in the Edgar fight, and he has got knockout power. And it's not just with his hands. I mean, the Clay Guida fight was that jumping knee. I just think For me, there's too many questions over Max Holloway. What condition is he in? And Ortega's, how dangerous he is everywhere. And I think this fight's going to go into the later rounds, and I think he's going to Ortega's going to get the stoppage via submission. I think it's going to be round 4, maybe even round 5. But yeah, I'm going with Brian Ortega to win this fight, and I think with that win, I think we'll see Max Holloway move up to lightweight as well. If he does lose, possibly even if he wins as well, to set up a super fight. Now he was meant to fight Khabib Nurmagomedov, of course. But yeah, I think either way, whether Ortega wins or loses, whether Holloway keeps the belt or not, I think Holloway will be moving up to lightweight after this fight.
Yeah, and the like you've already mentioned, like everybody will mention, and everybody has been mentioning pre-fight, it's a big question mark with Ortega and with Max and this weight cut and his health issue and stuff like that. Here's the issue I've personally got with picking a winner in this fight is I faded Ortega twice in his last 2 outings. Cub Swanson was supposed to beat him. He was the better striker. He was a guy that probably should stay off the mat. He did manage up until the final parts of round 1 to stay off the mat. He fucking did stay off the mat in round 2. He still ended up getting submitted. So Cub Swanson was supposed to beat him. And then Frankie Edgar, great wrestler, veteran, good boxer as well, had the exact style of fighting in mixed martial arts to beat someone like Ortega. He was supposed to beat Ortega, and he got knocked out. I think that was the first time in his career as well he'd been knocked out. Yeah, that's his career, yeah. And that was, he got knocked out by a jiu-jitsu guy. It's like, Ortega is supposed to be losing these fights. Even, Renato Moicano, he was losing that fight until he won it. Clay Guida, he was losing that fight until he won it. And like I say, it was Cub Swanson, he was losing that fight till he won it. It's like, the point I'm trying to make is I keep picking against Ortega and he keeps winning. Like you said, he keeps finding ways to win. And the last 2 times I faded him, I bet against him. And like I said, I lost money on it. So, you've got to learn in this gambling game. You're not going to do this you're not going to bet against someone 3 times in a row. When they're supposed to be losing and they keep winning, and especially when they're improving as well each fight. The thing is, though, with a healthy Max, I would probably be tempted to make that 3rd fade on Brian Ortega. I genuinely think Max Holloway is that good. He hasn't been taken down since Conor McGregor, ironically enough. So inside that, you've got Cole Miller, you've got Cub Swanson, you've got Charles Oliveira, Ricardo Lamas, Pettis. Aldo never really searches for takedowns anyway. But you've got a lot of guys that you would think in maybe 10 fights that you would concede 1 takedown, but he hasn't. So. And Ortega isn't the wrestling type, and this is what I mean. It's hard. It's hard to really pick Ortega because he doesn't use his wrestling. He just finds himself in these positions, and it's almost comes to the point when you're just like, right, well, it's not luck and it's not fluke. And I'm not saying any of his wins have been luck or flukes, by the way. I'm just saying that landing in those positions when you're not forcing a takedown is fortunate. And it just becomes a point where, he is doing enough to make that fight get to the mat, even if he's not really forcing it to the mat. It's a weird one to try and explain. But a healthy Max, I would be picking Max, and I would probably bet against Ortega and not learn from my previous mistakes. But in this spot, I think even if Max comes into this fight and he looks and says that he feels healthy, I just don't think he's going to be the same now. I don't know. Well, obviously we don't know what's happened to him with the weight cut and stuff like that. But he was always one of those fighters that looked awful on the scales anyway. So as fighters get older, they fill out into the body. Which, by the way, Ortega looks fucking huge right now. I've got no idea how that dude makes the weight. Holloway, like I've already mentioned, he's always looked like he's struggled to make the weight. It looks like it's taken its toll on him now. So even if he does get cleared to fight and he makes weight, I'm not sure how healthy he is actually going to be inside the cage. And it's a 25-minute fight. So with Ortega, these 25-minute fights are always going to benefit him because it's always giving him that extra 10 minutes time to find a way to get the fight to the mat, however he manages to do that. So I definitely think the 25-minute fight favours Ortega from the opportunistic point of view, and for the fact that I think he's going to be healthier in there than Max. I think his cardio will last longer than Max's in there. But like I say, if this was 2 fights ago, I would be picking Max and I would be betting Max, and I think Max Holloway would be a lot further away from a pick'em than what he is right now, because I think he is the right style to beat Ortega. Ortega doesn't really shoot for takedowns, but Max is like a cat anyway. He'll stay vertical at all costs, and he's just the quicker, more technical, better striker. But then even having said that, I could eat my words with that, because go back and look at the fight that Brian Ortega had with Moicano, and actually at the time you're thinking, fucking hell, Ortega isn't that good at striking, Moicano's piecing him up. Man, Moicano's probably the best striker in that division. Like, we now know that about him. He's fucking out. He's outrageous. He will be a champion. I think if Moicano fights Ortega or Holloway or Zabit, I think he beats them all. I genuinely think he's that good. And Ortega stood with Moicano. He busted Moicano's nose up. He was landing on Moicano. He was doing well against him, and it's just at the time we didn't realise how good Moicano actually was, but now we know how good he is. And then you think Ortega's striking's been improving. Is it even better than Max's? That's an argument. That's a debate. Some may say yes, and they might not be wrong. So ultimately, you're now thinking, well, Ortega may have the better striking. He definitely has the better ground game. He may have a cardio advantage, a durability advantage, because bear in mind, if Max is a little bit unhealthy getting in there, cutting so much weight, maybe even hydrating properly might not be 100% for him. His durability might have an effect from that. So, because obviously the brain's not got enough water. So there could be a whole host of different... Now you're suddenly thinking, well, is Ortega better in every area? There's an argument for that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying... I think Max Holloway's the better striker right now. But I don't think it's that big of a difference. It's definitely not as big as a difference as what it will be if it hits the mat. I can guarantee that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. As you can tell from a breakdown, I'm going with Ortega as well. I think if Max was healthy, this would be a different conversation. I think I've worded that wrong. We don't know if Max could be healthy, but I think if there wasn't these doubts on Max's health, then it would be a different conversation. But there is those doubts, there is those questions. So for that reason, I'm going Brian Ortega to win via submission as well. And that's all she wrote for the fight breakdown, guys. So we move on, and welcome to the hot topics portion. So the first thing I'd like to kick this off is surrounding the weight cutting issues. We've already touched upon it in the last breakdown of Max Holloway and Brian Ortega. It's definitely an issue. It's definitely something that needs tackling. There's so many different people have different opinions and different potential solutions, and some of them are actually really interested in. I heard on an interview with Gunnar Nelson today, because he's in favour of the 165 division.
Yeah, that'll suit you perfectly.
He was saying that one of the things that he could think of is making sure that you weigh in on fight day as well, and you can't weigh more than the weight class above you, which I think is good. But then you've still got an element of weight cutting in that. You've still got to make sure you're not above that. So the one thing I can think of is having sort of a strike-off system. So, you miss weight once, okay, you got the benefit of the doubt, but you've missed weight once. If you miss weight a second time, you're never allowed to fight in that division again, under any commission, under any promotion. And yes, there's still that element of weight cutting in there, and I get that, but at least you're not going to spend a career of killing yourself trying to cut weight, trying to ultimately missing weight, and keep getting the opportunities to cut that drastic bit of weight. you know, if there's that system in place where you miss weight once, that's fine. We'll give you that benefit of the doubt because, you know, humans make mistakes and sometimes people do get a bit lazy with weight cuts and they pay for it. That's fine. But you miss weight a second time and suddenly that benefit of the doubt's gone and you're never allowed to fight in that division again. You move up and that's it.
Yep.
And I ultimately think that people will take that weight cutting more seriously. But then there's still holes with that because people might put themselves through more shit to make that weight, to make sure they don't miss because they never want to get exiled from a division. So there's still holes in my thing. Something's got to be done. And the bottom line is, and the last thing I'll say on this, is the sad thing about this situation is it's going to take a fatality on the biggest stage in the biggest promotion, so the UFC. It's going to take a fatality in the UFC for something to be done about this.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts, John?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not a fan of weight cutting at all. And it's just the whole exercise of it really is just it's just something that's so ingrained in the sport that it just happens now, and it's so ingrained in combat sports that it happens. But when you actually sit there and think about it, it is pretty stupid because if it just ceased all of a sudden and everyone just moved up one weight class, then there's a potential we'd see much better fights as well because a lot of fighters must go in there drained and there must be injuries, niggling injuries because of the weight cuts and things like that. And added to the fact that obviously you're doing your weight cut in the final few days before the fight after a grueling training camp as well. It's just really something that when you think about it, take a step back and think about it from that perspective, is what really is the point of it? Because everyone does it as well in the division. It's not like, or pretty much I'd say probably 95% of guys. I know there's some guys like Gunnar Nelson who are an advocate of not cutting weight, but I'd imagine that pretty much all guys and the women cut weight and so what real advantage are you gaining there? You then saying, okay, I'm going to cut more weight than you're going to cut, and it just starts to deplete yourself and your own body and has ill effects on your health wise. And like you say, it probably is going to take some kind of fatality in the UFC, Bellator, for something to be done. We saw that in ONE FC. Unfortunately, one of their flyweights, I think it was, passed away, and they completely changed their division in, and everyone moved up a weight class, and
the problem is for me is soliciting that, because initially that's great. You know, you're forcing everyone up because the UFC can have a look at their roster and they can see where the well, I was going to say flyweights, but where the bantamweights are, where the featherweights are, where the and so forth, and move everybody up a division and then get rid of that final division, right?
Yeah.
But what happens in a year's time when a prospect comes up from the regionals and he was between a couple of divisions. He'd fought one at lightweight or one at welterweight, and then he comes into the UFC. He's going to just tell the UFC which weight he wants to fight at and then just start cutting weight to that weight class. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you can solicit it for the short term, but that doesn't work for the long term, because people will just... Ultimately, when you get to the UFC, they're going to need to know what weight you are. So they're going to ask you the question, what weight are you? We see you fought at welterweight. We've seen you fought at lightweight. So which one are you? They're going to say lightweight, just so they can cut the weight. It's a tough one, man. And just quickly, while we're on the 165 division as well, I get why they want to make that division, but that's great if they want to do it. Like, I'm not against making a 165 division, but if they're making that division purposely for cutting weight and the issues surrounding weight cutting, that ain't going to work either. Because when you start adding these intermediate divisions, all you're going to do is get people from two divisions above now being able to cut down to
165.
So you're still going to... This is what I mean. This is why it's not simple, and there's a reason why this hasn't been fixed yet, and that's because there isn't... I don't think there is a feasible solution that anybody's thought of yet. There's people that talk about only fighting at what you walk around at. But then, how often is someone going to have to be weighed for somebody to know what exactly they're walking around at? And then how do you create a division of that? Then how do you create champions of that division? Man, I'm telling you, like, you can go across so many different solutions of this, and there's gaping holes in every single one of them.
Yeah, that's the only thing I could ever think of is, say if you fight at 170, well, obviously 170 is going to move now, so we'll go with lightweight. So you fight at 155. The only way I think, and this isn't very practical in the slightest, so there's going to be huge cost elements and things like that. It's just regular weigh-ins in camp, in the build-up, and you're only allowed X percentage over that 155 to weigh in at throughout the camp, and then even then after you've weighed in the ceremonial weigh-in, you weigh in again on the same day as the fight to ensure that you somehow haven't managed to avoid these regular weigh-ins throughout camp, etc. But like I say, how practical is that? You can't
make a division out of that.
Exactly, you can't have 10 weigh-ins throughout your training camp. I know boxing do something similar. They regularly weigh in. I think it's like a month out and then a couple of weeks out, and then the start of fight week, and then obviously the normal weigh-ins. And those guys do cut weight as well. I know boxers do cut weight, but obviously they have a lot more divisions. And
well, that's what I was about to say to you. In your scenario, what you just mentioned, we'll end up having like 50 divisions in MMA.
Yeah,
essentially, the only thing I can take from that is maybe having sort of a maximum and minimum of a division. So
yeah,
having like 170 maximum 170, minimum 160, and you fight at your walk around weight, so you're not allowed to cut weight over an X percentage like what you've just said, but you just have to be in that gap. But what happens to the people that are pushed just over to that? They're not going to want to be the lowest in the division, so they're going to want to cut weight to get this. It all falls in the same circle, man. It's like this is why I picked it as a hot topic, because it's interesting. It's interesting to gauge different ideas, but the bottom line is every idea that someone will throw at me for weight cutting, I'll find a gaping hole in it, which will still make it, will still make weight cutting a dangerous thing in this sport. Maybe the bottom line is that the fact of the matter is that it can't be totally eradicated, and maybe we just have to go with a solution that does have a gaping hole in it, but go with the solution that has one gaping hole opposed to the solution that has 2 or 3 gaping holes. Just it's always gonna be a problem.
Yeah, one final thing that I'll just say is I do like the fact that that obviously these fighters will try and cut as much weight as possible to be as big as possible on fight day and have that slight advantage over their opponent. Now, like you say, if you did have the between X amount and X amount you have to weigh, you won't want the guys weighing in at being the lower end of the division, but I have to give a shout out to our big heavyweights here. You get guys who are 240, 245 pounds coming up against guys who are 265 pound, and they've cut weight to make that 265 pound limit, and those guys don't seem to care. And
exactly, and that's a great point.
Yeah, that's what always makes me laugh. I mean, how can these guys have like 20 pounds, could be even more, like I say, some guys definitely, Derek Lewis for one, I know, for example, has to cut down to 265, so I don't know what does he weigh come fight night. I don't know, but sometimes
I mean, it gets to a point though, man, like when you're over like 230 pound, you probably, it doesn't matter how big you are from then, in regards to taking a punch and giving a punch.
With the punching aspect of things, I definitely agree, but I still think that would have some kind of effect on like the wrestling side of things.
And I take that into consideration when I gamble. Like, I'll if one of the heavyweights is a wrestler and he's making the heavyweight limit and he's fighting somebody at 230 pound, that's fucking that's at least 35 pound difference.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. But these guys don't seem to mind too much. I do find it funny that obviously it's so big a deal for the other divisions, but as soon as you jump up to heavyweight, they don't seem to mind too much. And I will quickly, sorry, I did say that was my last point, but I will give a shout out to those guys as well who move up a weight class and decide that cutting weight isn't a good thing to do. Dustin Poirier is a good example for one. Just think of Tom Breeze. I know he doesn't cut much weight now to make
the middleweight title fight next year.
Yeah, to make middleweight. There's a couple of other names that I had in my head. Guys who've gone up a weight. Dan Hooker was another one. These guys, and they're doing well as well. It's not like they're massively struggling in the division. I mean, Dustin Poirier, he's looking an absolute beast at lightweight. Like I say, Tom Breeze, he doesn't cut very much to make the middleweight limit, but he's going to be up there in the top 10 next year. So yeah.
And like I just said to you, the middleweight championship.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Gastelum and Gastelum, exactly, yeah. So sometimes cutting weight isn't the be all and end all. It isn't the solution to all the problems as to why certain guys aren't winning their fights and climbing the rankings.
Absolutely. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the UFC light heavyweight division, and this was one that you wanted to talk about, John. So I'll let you kick things off.
Yeah, obviously, I just wanted to get your take really on the light heavyweight division. I know we've got a couple of clashes in the light heavyweight division on this card. We've obviously got your guy Aleksandar Rakic. We've also got the Jimi Manuwa and Thiago Santos fight. So obviously, I wanted to get your take on the division and where it stands, what the future holds for the division, who's really up and coming and the future of the division. And the light heavyweight division always used to be one of the strongest divisions, likes of Tito Ortiz, Chuck Liddell, of course, we would know, Rashad Evans, Rampage Jackson, Shogun, Lyoto Machida. There's been some excellent guys who have fought at light heavyweight. I mean, what's your take on the division now? Obviously, John Jones and Gustafsson are going to be fighting soon. The return of John Jones, which is obviously fantastic for the division, but I don't know whether you want me to give you my take before or whether you want to jump
far away,
first. Man. Yeah, for me, I feel like the division's been on a slide recently. When you look at the rankings, I mean, Jones and Gustafsson rank 1 and 2, and then you've got Anthony Smith, Jan Blachowicz, Ilir Latifi, Volkan Ozdemir. Those four guys there. Like I say, I never come on this show to offend anyone and take anything away because they're all fantastic athletes. But I think when you look at that pedigree of fighter compared to the pedigree of fighter from the era that I just previously mentioned, I don't think it's strong. I do think there are some great up-and-comers. Rakic being one, for example. Dominic Reyes being another one. So there are some exciting guys coming through, and obviously Jones and Gustafsson are still relatively young in the fight game, so there's still definitely some exciting fights in the future, and the future still bright for the division. But yeah, I just think over the last few years it's been lacking quality somewhat. Obviously Jones has been in and out, and then we've had Cormier come in, Anthony Johnson left, who's another strong competitor in the division, and yeah, I just wanted to get your take. I mean, Jimi Manuwa was fighting, but we already mentioned he's 38 years old now. He's on the decline. Yeah, so I just wanted to get your take on the division. Like I said, there's some good up-and-comers in like Reyes and Rakic who I'm really excited about seeing over the years to come. But yeah, how do you see the division now and how it stacks up to the light heavyweight division of old?
It's getting there. The thing is what you've got to think. I mean, I've been watching MMA now for over 10 years, so I've seen fighters come and go, and divisions get good and divisions get bad and rejuvenate, and that's naturally what happens, and each division just seems to take a turn. I mean, it wasn't too long ago, maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, that the middleweight division went really dry, really dull, and you were thinking, well, it was sort of like, I think it was the point where Anderson Silva got knocked out by Weidman and then got beat a second time by Weidman, and Anderson Silva. It was at that point, maybe just around then, where it was a bit like, well, who's coming up? Who's going to be the one to actually replace Silva, and who's even going to beat Anderson Silva? Because there was, your top three had probably already been beaten by him like once or maybe twice. So it wasn't so long ago that the middleweight division was in the same place as what the light heavyweight division probably is now. Even though I think the light heavyweight division is starting to pick up a little bit. If we'd had this conversation last year, then I would be saying it's the exact same position as what the middleweight division was in. But now look at the middleweight division, man. You've got Whitaker, you've got Gastelum, you've got Adesanya, you've got Jacare, you've got Paulo Costa, Brunson. Man, the division's stacked. But like I say, 2 or 3 years ago, that division was, you were looking for where the talent's going to come from, and suddenly it fills up. And that's what happened with light heavyweight. Like I mentioned, a year ago it was very poor, to the point where again you were thinking, well, where's it going to come from? And now it is slowly picking back up again. Jan Blachowicz got a new doctor. John Jones is back. Gustafsson is obviously, but he never really went away, even though he has been quite inactive. The good thing about John Jones as well is I was listening to an interview and he said that because of everything that's happened and things like that, he feels that he's still got a lot to prove. He wanted to retire by the age of 30, but because all this stuff got in, all his personal stuff got in the way and it pushed his career back, that means he wants to still have a legacy in the sport, and to do that, and it's prolonged his career basically. So I think as long as he does remain active and, you know, doesn't get popped for anything and stays out of trouble, I think that we've got John Jones for at least another like 4 or 5 years, so that's cool. And then like you've already mentioned, we've got Alex coming in. You know, I talk to Alex regularly, and the dude's so confident, but he doesn't ever try and sell himself to anybody in regards to like, oh, I'm this and I'm that. You just talk to him, and he's honestly one of the nicest, most down-to-earth people, and you just get that vibe from him that he's a fucking killer. He knows it. He knows it, and he wants you to know it, but he doesn't need you to know it. You know what I mean? He's that type of person, and I feel that Dominic Reyes, and it's funny as well. Like, I'm going to drop a little bit of a plug here. If you watch my interview with Alex that I did a couple of weeks ago, the one question I definitely wanted to get in there was about Dominic Reyes, and I did at the end. And he is a fighter that Alex has been keeping his eye on. And Alex even said to me in that interview, he said, you know, he watches Dominic Reyes and he almost sees himself when he watches Dominic Reyes, except Dominic Reyes is a southpaw, whereas he's predominantly orthodox. So them two for me are going to run the division. They're both really young. I actually think it's going to be interesting once those two hit that top 5, because initially I didn't think any of them was going to fight John Jones, but I actually think either one of them or both of them may end up fighting John Jones, and that's crazy to even think about right now. But yeah, as the light heavyweight division, it'll get there. Just to go back to, you know, the original topic, it'll get there. It is getting there slowly. This time last year we didn't really have Dominic Reyes as a prospect. We didn't really have Aleksandar Rakic as a prospect. We didn't really have John Jones in the picture because, you know, he was to and from. Then Daniel Cormier was sort of like the champion, but then he lost. He kept losing to John Jones. But then John Jones kept on, you know, getting popped, and it was like, well, then is Daniel Cormier really this? Is he really the best light heavyweight out there because of the whole situation with Jones? So then Ozdemir came up into the division, got a title shot after a couple of fights, and it's like, well, again, no disrespect to Ozdemir, but we've now seen. I think we now know a lot about Ozdemir after that Anthony Smith fight. And in my opinion, should never have been in there with someone like Daniel Cormier anyway. So then you're thinking, well, yeah, this division's really light. But like I say, things are looking up. And you know what? Over the next year, don't ask me who, because off the top of my head, I've got no idea if there even is anybody. After putting my head down and doing a bit of research, I would never know. But you know, in the next year, we might see another Aleksandar Rakic, we might see another Dominic Reyes starting to come up, or a couple of them that really start to shine in the light heavyweight division. You know, we've got fighters like Magomed Ankalaev, who's a good prospect. You know, we could see him in the top 10 in his next 2 or 3 fights, maybe even top 5. So yeah, I mean, it's not that. Like I say, every division goes through this. Every division empties of the talent and then has to rebuild. But naturally, that process forms. So
Yeah.
it's a time thing more than anything else. So I think the light heavyweight division in 12 months' time will be back and banging for sure.
Excellent.
And we'll look back at this conversation and just think it was just a time thing, just like the middleweight division was.
Yeah.
And then it'll be another division. You know,
of course,
I've got a funny feeling it might be the heavyweight division. That's my next prediction, because I don't know whether you saw, but with Mark Hunt leaving the UFC, Ivanov's now in the top 15. He's fucking 0-1 in the UFC, and he's a top 15 fighter. So the heavyweight division could be next. But yeah, and finally, as we've done in every other week, we're just going to quickly discuss the potential fights that could earn a fight of the night bonus. So you had last week, seeing as though we always seem to go pretty close. I actually haven't had a quick look at this. I think if Gunnar Nelson gets a submission, I think that could possibly go down as a performance of the night if he does it with relative ease. I think there's going to be a knockout in Jimi, Manuwa and Thiago Santos, so I think whoever gets that knockout, I think it's going to be brutal as well, whichever way it goes. I think whoever scores that brutal knockout will potentially get a performance of the night bonus. Fight of the night, I mean, my fight of the night is probably not going to get it with Aubin-Mercier and Gilbert Burns. I just got a funny feeling it's going to be more of a technical chess match than a really super exciting fight. I don't really know where fight of the night's going to come. I think if Max Holloway and Ortega have 3 or 4 rounds, I think they might naturally get that fight of the night, just because it's the main event, and you know the UFC tends to favour that, and I genuinely think it could be. I don't think it's going to be a boring fight. So yeah, I'll go with that. I'll go with the main event as the fight of the night, and I'll go Gunnar Nelson and if Gunnar Nelson gets a submission. If he doesn't get the submission, maybe Rakic gets a finish and gets a performance of the night bonus. Either way, I think the fight of the night is going to be Max Holloway, Brian Ortega. I think a definite performance of the bonus is going to be in Jimi Manuwa and Thiago Santos. What about you?
Not very exciting, unfortunately, for everyone, but I'm going with exactly the same. I've got Holloway and Ortega as the one of the performances of the night for the fight of the night, and Gunnar Nelson if he gets that submission, and Manuwa against Santos. I think one of those two trying to take the other one's head off will get the other one. So exactly the same.
And that's why we take it in turns.
Exactly.
And that's a lot for this week's podcast, guys. So if you like the podcast, please hit the like button and subscribe. We've still got a lot of content coming up for you guys in the run up to Christmas, so don't miss out. For the bets this week at UFC 231, don't forget to check out the premium bets from Newsome MMA and the membership options available too. And never hesitate to contact me if you have any questions or inquiries. So John, before we hit the Newsome MMA 2-minute plug, what do you need to mention?
As always, check out my work on Fight Post, either on search for that on Facebook, Fight Post MMA, or www.fightpost.co.uk, or if you're on Twitter, hit me up at MMA and me. As always, as I say every week, I love to talk MMA. I love to talk to MMA fans. I love seeing people's opinions on fights and on news articles and things like that. So the more the merrier. I always enjoy chatting to anyone about anything MMA related. So hit me up and follow me there, and I'll make sure I follow you back.
Sweet. Now for the quick Newsome MMA 2-minute plug. First of all, I'd like to talk about Concussion Pro 1, who are partnering Newsome MMA. Concussion Pro 1 is the world's first dedicated concussion supplement supporting brain health and performance. The product is honestly groundbreaking, and there isn't another supplement on the market like it. The unique formula that makes up Concussion Pro 1 has been developed and created by some of the world's most decorated sports scientists to help protect and support the brain and its performance. Approved by the UK Mixed Martial Arts Federation, Concussion Pro 1 provides some amazing support to the brain. It increases mental performance, faster recovery from injury, reduced inflammation post-impact, improved neural protection, and much more. With professional athletes such as UFC 231's Aleksandar Rakic, Mark Diakese and Scott Askham using Concussion Pro 1, you can already see how vital the product is, not only for MMA, but for all contact sports. To find out more information by clicking on any of the banners on the Newsome MMA website, or go to concussionpro1.com. Secondly, please check out the sponsors of Newsome MMA, which is CBDLife UK. I'm a great advocate and case study for CBD. In the MMA gambling world, people often talk about sweats and nerves as they're watching the fight that they've bet on fight. These feelings are absolutely real, and because of this, I vape CBD to help me relax a little bit on fight night. If I'm honest, I didn't think it would make much of a difference, but it really does, and I would honestly recommend it to anybody, especially MMA gamblers. You can access the offers from my sponsorship by clicking any of the banners on the Newsome MMA website, and you can also get 15% off your first order by using promo code Newsome MMA. And that's it from us, guys. Enjoy the fights on Saturday night. Thank you and goodbye.
Thanks. Enjoy.